So we kick things off in the White Snow Field, a place that's supposedly the center of the entire world. This joint is crawling with some seriously terrifying monsters roaming its massive snowy plains. We're talking about a giant white serpent that literally eats glaciers for breakfast, a colossal gray bear that can cause earthquakes just by stomping around, and even a cursed rat that spreads corruption and pollutes the oceans. Nasty stuff. But get this, despite all these nightmare creatures, an emperor who managed to escape this place once said that the monsters aren't even the most dangerous thing there. We cut to the heart of this frozen hellscape, where a man is locked in a brutal fight with a ferocious monster that looks like a giant scorpion. He moves with lightning speed, landing swift strikes and managing to take the beast down. Right after the battle, one of his companions chimes in with a snarky comment, saying his performance is exactly what you'd expect from a barbarian, always showing off his ignorance like it's some kind of medal. Our silver-haired protagonist just grumbles to himself, wondering how much longer he has to put up with these idiots. A young girl with him then innocently asks what the word ignorance means and if it's something you can eat. He just lets out a heavy sigh of despair and tells her to just forget about it. In another scene, we see him absolutely fuming at them. He's scolding them for eating some food he specifically told them not to touch, warning them it would kill them. He's completely baffled, asking how they managed to devour the entire supply in less than a week. The girl and a bald-headed guy just look proud, acting like they conquered some admirable challenge and taking his scolding as a compliment. Suddenly, the bald dude, whose name is Greta, starts feeling sick and collapses unconscious. The girl starts screaming and desperately trying to wake him up. Amidst all this chaos, our hero thinks to himself that this is not at all the life he ever wanted. His mind flashes back to his old life, where he dreamed of being transported to a fantasy world filled with magic and incredible wonders. To make that dream a reality, he actually quit his job and went on this insane journey. He climbed the tallest mountain on Earth, traveled to the planet's core, and even made his way to the southernmost point. But of course, absolutely nothing happened. He prayed every single night, wishing he could wake up in a fantasy world, but he was starting to realize that reality was a far cry from his dreams. And then, one day, his prayers were finally answered. The scene shifts back in time again. A man is shivering uncontrollably in the freezing cold. His buddy tells him he better wrap himself in more fur if he doesn't want to become a human popsicle. It turns out they're a squad of mercenaries led by a captain, and their mission is to cross this white snowfield. One of the guys complains that this job is a suicide mission, no matter how good the pay is, calling the whole idea of crossing this place complete madness. The captain barks at them to shut up, reminding them that they all signed up for this. The guy shoots back that they had no idea it would be this brutally cold. Meanwhile, inside a cozy carriage, an elderly servant checks on a young lady from the house of Akasha named Melina, asking if she's alright. She assures him she's fine. Outside, they can hear the guards whining about the deadly cold, which makes the servant call them a bunch of insolent bastards. But Melina steps in, telling her servant not to be so hard on them. After all, they were the only ones brave enough to agree to guard them on this journey across the snowfield. Melina then suggests they should let the guards come inside, since it sounds like it's absolutely freezing out there. The servant immediately shoots down the idea, reminding her that she knows exactly what kind of things live in this white snowfield. Melina correctly guesses he's talking about the monsters. The servant then launches into a story about an emperor from long ago who wanted to rule the world. To achieve this, he set his sights on conquering the white snowfield. The emperor gathered his best warriors and soldiers and personally led them into the frozen wasteland. A few years later, his entire empire had crumbled and been lost to history. The emperor returned completely alone, having lost every single one of his men. He looked like he had aged decades and spoke like a man who had lost his mind. He confirmed that monsters were real and lived in the snowfield, but he also added that the most dangerous thing out there wasn't a monster, it was the barbarian. He described the place as a living hell from which no one ever returns. The servant tries to brush it off, saying it's just an old legend. But Melina points out that the emperor's words held a lot of weight, since most of the creatures he described were actually discovered later on. The servant just smiles and adds that despite all that, nobody has ever claimed to have actually seen a barbarian. Melina has to admit that he's got a point. Outside, the mercenary captain suddenly yells for everyone to stop, pointing towards something on the horizon. Through the heavy snowfall, they can't quite make out the figure in the distance. The captain tells them the good news is that whatever it is, it's small. The bad news, it's heading straight for them. Everyone is on edge, completely shocked and waiting to see what happens. As the figure gets closer, they realize it's a person. But the real shock hits when they recognize him as a barbarian, and pure terror fills the hearts of the mercenaries. The barbarian walks right up to them and starts talking. He explains that he couldn't take being around the other barbarians anymore, so he went out for a walk. He introduces himself as Kettle from the Akan tribe and says he's surprised to see strangers out here, calling it a lucky break. Kettle figures they're a group of mercenaries guarding a merchant caravan and suggests they should probably turn back, though he doubts they'll listen. He then asks if their boss is in the carriage nearby. A moment later, he flashes them a smile and completely throws them for a loop by saying he'd like to be hired too. The mercenaries are just stunned, asking him what in the world he means. Kettle clarifies his offer. He'll help them cross the snowfield. The mercs are super suspicious. Why would a legendary barbarian be asking for a job if that's all he wants? One of them wonders if this means he's not going to attack them. Kettle seems to read their minds, telling them that if he wanted them dead, they'd all be corpses by now. One of the mercenaries nervously asks his captain what he wants to do. Inside the carriage, the servant and Melina have been listening to the whole thing. The captain informs Melina that the barbarian wants to be hired as a mercenary and asks for her decision. When the servant asks the captain what he thinks would happen if a fight broke out, the captain strongly advises against it. Hearing that, Melina makes up her mind. She tells the captain to let the barbarian know they accept his offer. The captain acknowledges her decision and goes to tell Kettle the news. Kettle is pleased to hear they've agreed. Then, to the captain's shock and horror, Kettle starts walking directly towards the carriage. He tells the captain there's no need to be scared. They're just employees now, and he needs to have a word with the employer directly. The captain warns him that he won't hesitate to take him down if he tries anything funny. Kettle just stays silent. One of the mercs anxiously asks the captain if it's really a good idea to let him meet her. Another one wonders why they, as guards, aren't stopping him. His buddy just scoffs, saying the idea of them stopping that guy is a complete joke. Inside, the servant is freaking out as Melina gets ready to go outside, but she tells him to stay calm. They hear Kettle's voice from outside asking if he can come in, which shocks Melina. After pulling herself together, she tells him he can enter. Inside the carriage, Kettle tells the servant he hopes he's calmed down now, assuring him he has no intention of hurting them. Melina is just thinking, the legendary barbarian is standing right in front of me. She nervously greets him, and Kettle calmly returns the greeting. He comments on how warm the carriage is, nodding that it must be hard to keep it this warm in the middle of a snowfield. Melina explains that the heat is from magic, and Kettle seems satisfied, as if that's what he expected from this world. Kettle gets straight to the point. He explains that this place is incredibly dangerous and that their chances of making it out alive with their current mercenaries are slim to none. So he's going to take over their protection, but he adds he has one condition. Melina asks him what he wants. Kettle reveals his price, knowledge from the outside world, specifically the information she has. Melina asks for more details, and Kettle assures her she won't lose anything in the deal. Realizing she doesn't really have another option, Melina agrees. Kettle is pleased and asks for her name. She introduces herself as Melina from the House of Akasha. He, in turn, introduces himself as Kettle, saying it's a pleasure to work with her. The story then dives into Kettle's thoughts. He had always yearned for a fantasy world, only to wake up one day as a barbarian in a snowfield with no time to even figure out why. He remembers nothing but the biting cold and an endless stream of powerful monsters. He became the leader of a tribe, fought every day just to survive, and endured it all in complete despair. For years and years, he tried to escape that miserable snowfield. But some unknown power, which appeared as an incomplete quest, kept him trapped. He could only leave after finishing it. Just when he was about to give up, people from the outside world would occasionally show up, though he never understood why anyone would willingly come to such a godforsaken place. Kettle eventually realized that the world outside this frozen hell was the fantasy world of magic he had always dreamed of. From that moment on, his goal shifted from just surviving to getting out. He recalls crushing monsters and completing quest after quest, driven by the single thought that one day he would escape. Since he can't leave this place himself, any information he gets from outsiders is incredibly valuable. But most of the humans he'd met before either freaked out and tried to fight him or just went insane. He reflects on how long it's been since he had a proper conversation with a civilized person, feeling like talking with Melina is healing his mind after being surrounded by uneducated barbarians for so long. Back in the present, Kettle correctly deduces that they're transporting weapons. Melina is shocked and asks how he knew. He explains that he can hear the sound of sharp weapons clanging in the other carriages, making it obvious. He then asks if there's a war going on outside. Melina confirms that the Empire and the Kingdom are currently at war. Kettle remarks that the outside world isn't exactly peaceful either. Melina adds that the Great Empire is pushing its advantage with massive numbers, but the Kingdom is holding its ground, with swordmasters and heroes defending the borders. These words catch Kettle's interest, and he asks what kind of power they use. Melina asks if he's never heard of mysticism, and he tells her he's never been outside of this place. Melina admits she doesn't know all the specifics, but she starts to explain. She says there's a power called mysticism in the world, and only a very small number of people can feel or use it. These people are given power ranks. Third rank refers to those who can just sense the power. Second rank includes those who can actually use it. And first rank is for those who can manifest the power as mana or aura. Knights, mages, and element users usually fall into this category. She explains that beyond that, the ranks become kind of meaningless because the people who hold them are on a whole other level. She describes the transcendent rank, people who can freely control and use mysticism, capable of splitting the heavens and the earth. A sword master belongs to this rank. And finally, there's the hero, who's described as a mythical being who goes beyond just controlling mysticism to actually influencing the world itself. Melina wraps up by saying that even a third-rank user is considered a big shot in a small town. After hearing all this, Kettle declares that he wants to meet them, which leaves Melina completely bewildered. bewildered. Kettle thinks to himself that he's lost track of how long he's been trapped here, just desperately trying to survive. All he knows is that he's in a snowfield in a fantasy world he can't escape. He desperately wants out of this snowfield. No, he corrects himself, he must get out. Melina brings the conversation back, asking Kettle if he's the barbarian from the legends. He says you could say that, and he can tell from her face that she knows about him. She confirms there's a legend about him, which actually surprises Kettle. He then laughs, realizing that the crazy guy he met a long time ago must have been the emperor from her story. He assures Melina that her legend is probably true, since a guy like that really did come here ages ago. Kettle changes the subject, wondering why they're hauling such a huge amount of weapons through this ridiculously dangerous snowfield. When Kettle asks her why she's on this journey, Melina admits that they need a lot of money. She explains that her family, who have been traders for generations, are buried under massive debt because of schemes from jealous rivals. This whole trip is a last-ditch effort to save their family from ruin. Kettle, being incredibly sharp, figures out her plan. He deduces that she's planning to sell the weapons to the kingdom, which is at war with the Empire. This shocks Melina again with how perceptive he is. Kettle lays out his logic. She mentioned the Empire attacks with huge numbers, which means they don't need weapons, so it must be the kingdom that's desperate for them. And when supply is low and demand is high, prices skyrocket. He concludes that even though he doesn't know the value of things outside, the profit must be worth the risk of crossing the snowfield. He also figures out that since they're taking this insane route, there must be no other way to get to the kingdom, which probably means their territory borders the Empire's. Melina confirms that he's absolutely right. She's completely stunned by his intelligence, thinking that this is impossible. She heard the legendary Barbarian was a savage, ignorant brute. She starts to wonder who this man really is. Suddenly, the carriage shakes violently and the servant yells out in surprise. Kettle calmly announces that they have some uninvited guests. Outside, a massive, grotesque monster appears before the mercenaries. They recognize it as a black slime. Kettle asks if that's what it's called, and Melina confirms it, adding that it's a monster that's been documented in their archives. She explains that many powerful adventurers have challenged the snowfield over the years, and while few came back alive, they left records of the creatures they saw. The black slime shows up in most of them. She then asks Kettle if he knows it. Kettle casually replies, "Of course I know it." He describes them as rubbery things that are decent for a snack, calling them a pretty good meal. Melina is horrified, asking in disbelief if he actually eats them. He asks if she wants to try one and suggests they go hunt some, but she frantically refuses. The black slime gets ready to attack, and everyone looks to Kettle for help. But Kettle clarifies that his deal is to protect their lives, which means he'll only step in if there's a real imminent danger. He tells them they can handle this thing on their own. More importantly, he needs to see for himself what the power level of the outside world is like. The monster lunges at the mercenaries, and the captain orders his men to raise their shields. They struggle against the monster's powerful blows. One of them leaps into the air to try and finish it off, but he gets swatted away like a fly, making him curse the monster's strength. The captain remembers a key piece of information and shouts out its attack pattern, explaining that the black slime can only move in a straight line. He orders his men to spread out and coordinate their attacks. His men immediately follow the order. They start executing the plan perfectly, dodging the slime's charges and landing their strikes at the same time. The monster shrieks in pain from their combined assault. As they keep stabbing it relentlessly, the captain yells at them to keep up the attack. When the captain realizes that their normal attacks aren't doing much, he orders them to aim for the nucleus hidden somewhere inside the monster. The captain himself delivers a powerful downward slash with his glowing sword, slicing through the slime's body. The monster's red nucleus shatters and its body begins to melt away. The mercenaries celebrate their victory, panting and in disbelief that they actually managed to kill it. But their celebration is cut short when another monster, a giant white wolf, suddenly appears. The mercenaries immediately engage the new threat, with one of them shouting to aim for the neck. Another one pounces directly onto the wolf. After the battle, one of the mercenaries comments with a bit of arrogance that the white snowfield isn't so tough after all, and that the rumors were probably exaggerated. But the captain shuts him down, warning him not to get cocky and reminding them that they're not even halfway there yet. The conversation then turns to Kettle. One merc wonders if the barbarian is really that strong, pointing out that he's just a character in the Emperor's legend and hasn't even fought yet. Another adds that Kettle, who's supposedly at the bottom of the food chain here, is just relying on them for protection. They decide they should test his strength. Inside the carriage, there's a tense silence between Melina and Kettle. A mercenary comes up to the carriage and asks to speak with Melina. He reminds her that they are mercenaries risking their lives to fulfill their contract with her. Melina expresses her deep gratitude, saying she's thankful they took on this dangerous mission that everyone else ran away from. She says that without them, she wouldn't have even been able to try. But the mercenary says there's one thing that's bothering them. The barbarian hasn't fought a single time. They tell her they want to confirm if he truly deserves the special treatment he's getting. The captain chimes in, claiming he tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. Kettle, who's been listening the whole time, time interrupts. He says he doesn't mind a test of strength, but not right now. He explains that they have other visitors who arrived before them. A new ominous voice echoes through the air, expressing its delight at the arrival of weak humans, calling them a delicacy. Everyone is shocked as a new threat appears. A massive, terrifying white serpent emerges, telling them to scream and suffer all they want, as it will only add flavor to its meal. The serpent's overwhelming presence makes Melina and the mercenaries cry out in pain. Kettle steps forward and orders the serpent to stop, declaring that these people are his guests and commanding it to go back where it came from. The serpent asks Kettle why he's here, reminding him of the Snowfield's rule that prohibits leaving one's tribe's territory. Kettle replies that it's none of its business, which infuriates the serpent. It announces its identity as a serpent and questions how a mere barbarian dares to give it orders, the one who was promised immortality. Kettle sarcastically replies that it sounds like it needs to be taught some manners, and launches himself at it in a fierce attack. The collision results in a massive explosion of energy, creating a powerful shockwave. Melina screams from the sheer force of the blast. Kettle stands over the defeated serpent, remarking that it's the type that only listens after a good beating. Melina watches in total awe. Kettle reassures her that he'll finish this quickly. He then unleashes a final, devastating attack, completely obliterating the serpent in a brilliant flash of light. After that display, the mercenaries who had doubted Kettle's power are on their knees, begging for his forgiveness. He tells them it's alright, that he understands it's not easy to trust a stranger. Kettle then turns to Melina, saying he has a question. He notes that from her clothes and the way she speaks, she doesn't seem like just a simple family representative. He asks her why she personally came on this dangerous journey. After a bit of hesitation, Melina reveals that she's the first daughter of Velika, a concubine to Lord Kasakakasha. She explains that her mother, who was part of a political marriage, was used and then abandoned, a miserable woman with no real power. Melina confesses that she and her mother are considered family in name only. In reality, they're treated like servants. She then regrets saying so much. She confirms that she volunteered for this mission, adding that someone had to set an example. Kettle tells her he understands, describing her as very smart, greedy, and incredibly ambitious. Just then, the exit of the snowfield appears before them. The mercenaries are stunned by the sight of green grass, a sign that their hellish journey is finally over. Melina thanks Kettle, and he tells her they can just return through the Empire since it'll be easy after they sell the weapons. Melina then asks him what he meant by calling her smart and ambitious. Kettle confirms his words meant exactly what they sounded like. He breaks down his deduction. Her once respected family is now in turmoil because of money problems. He adds that even though she's the daughter of a concubine, if she's the one who personally takes action and saves the family from collapse, who do you think the people will trust and follow? He concludes that her real goal is to seize actual power within the family. He then asks if he's wrong, and Melina admits his analysis is perfect. Kettle comments that it's a classic story for a concubine's child to take on a dangerous task to inherit the family. Melina is just thinking to herself that this barbarian is brilliant, not like the half-baked intellectuals she's used to. She imagines what it would be like if his power, the power that defeated that white serpent without a scratch, was hers. So she makes him an offer. If he ever thinks about leaving the snowfield, he should come with her. Kettle turns her down for now, explaining that he still has some things to take care of. So Melina offers him a piece of her jewelry instead. She tells him that if he ever gets out and looks for the Akasha family, he should show them this piece. Kettle gladly accepts the gift. They say their goodbyes, with Melina thanking him and hoping they'll meet again. Kettle watches their carriage drive away. 5 years later, back in the white snowfield, a message appears, stating that Kettle has completed quest number 1784 and that all conditions have been met. Another message tells him he can now leave the snowfield. He starts to walk through a shimmering barrier. Kettle thinks to himself that this is it, his first step into the fantasy world he's always dreamed of. He takes a deep breath, enjoying the smells of grass, animals, and the river, since he never would have experienced in the snowfield. He shouts at the distant snowfield, vowing never to return. He reflects on finally reaching the world of his dreams, a world of fantasy and mystery he thought he'd never see. And even though the starting point was a complete nightmare, he managed to survive. He declares his intention to enjoy everything this world has to offer: dragons, elves, magic, and swords. He believes his intense desire to reach this world is what kept him alive in that hell. Then he senses a group of people nearby. He figures it must be a village and gets excited to finally see a civilized town. He remembers the ignorant barbarians he lived with and how they had no concept of proper shelter. He feels a deep longing for a well-designed human settlement. As he's wondering how to politely introduce himself, he hears a voice. The voice announces to the dear elf villagers that this place will become their new home. He watches a group of elves unloading their things and celebrating. A young elf nervously asks an elder if the place is really safe. The elder reassures him that it is, but the young elf is still worried, pointing out that even though the area is remote and hard for humans to reach, it's still close to the snowfield. The elder understands he's afraid of monsters. He tells the young elf that nothing has come out of the snowfield for thousands of years and that they've set up a barrier just in case. He explains that they've placed a magical concealment barrier based on ancient elven magic, making the place look like a normal forest. As long as the barrier is up, no outsider can find them. He adds that even if monsters did come, they have Her Majesty the Queen, who even the monsters of the snowfield can't touch. At that very moment, Kettle feels like he's torn something as he walks. He wonders if there was something there, completely unaware that he just walked right through their barrier. As Kettle wanders through the forest, he wonders how much farther he has to go. Suddenly, he stumbles upon a lost little elf girl. He's overjoyed to see a real elf, one of the fantasy races he's always dreamed of, and feels like his survival has been worth it. The little girl is crying and scared, having realized she's wandered too far from home. Kettle approaches her and says hello, but the girl takes one look at him, panics, and faints. Kettle catches her before she hits the ground. He's a bit puzzled about what to do now that she's passed out before they could even talk. He decides the best thing to do is take her back to her village. He remembers that in all the legends, elves are a peaceful and kind race. He hopes that if he returns the child, they'll welcome him with open arms and he'll get to experience their famous hospitality. He's really looking forward to it. When he arrives at the village carrying the child, a woman who is probably her mother sees him and screams in terror for her child, shocked to see a human there. The elves immediately react with hostility, demanding to know who he is and how he got through their barrier. Kettle realizes this is not going the way he planned. The child's mother keeps screaming. The elf elder expresses his shock, wondering how a human could have possibly entered their protected land. One of the elves tells him there's a crack in the barrier, and the elder panics, asking where the queen is. He's told she's out on a short reconnaissance tour. Kettle tries to explain that he's not an enemy, but a warrior threatens to hunt him to the ends of the earth if he doesn't give the child back. The elder declares that their location has been compromised and concludes that since the barrier was breached, the humans must have come fully prepared. He wonders how long they've been tracking them. Kettle realizes they think he's a kidnapper and decides he needs to clear up this misunderstanding first. He spots the child, who has woken up on the ground, and tells her to go back to her people. The child looks at him, terrified by his intimidating appearance, and then runs away screaming. She's crying so hard that Kettle starts to wonder if his face is really that scary. He's a little shocked. He thought he looked pretty decent back in the snowfield. He tries to talk to them again, explaining that he returned the child and he's not their enemy. But the elder just shouts that the hostage has been released and orders everyone to attack. The elves draw their bows and aim their arrows at him. As the arrows fly, Kettle wonders if they're even listening to him. He thinks about the situation. In the legends, elves are kind, nature-loving, and peaceful, but the real elves he's met are violent and savage. He concludes that at the end of the day, elves are a race that lives in nature, which probably means their way of life is more brutal than he imagined. Nature is a world of survival of the fittest, far from peaceful. In that sense, he can kind of understand the elves' brutality. As arrows rain down on him and bounce harmlessly off his body, he calmly accepts that this is reality. The elves are completely shocked. The elder wonders what kind of magical tool Kettle is using and orders the archers to keep firing, assuming he must have a limit. Kettle decides it's time to calm them down and unleashes a massive wave of purple energy. The explosion creates a powerful shockwave, sending the elves flying through the air. The elder stands there in a daze, wondering what just happened. Kettle, standing in the crater created by the blast, repeats that he is not their enemy. He thinks to himself that he might have misjudged his own strength a little bit. At that moment, Kettle is hit by another arrow, this one surrounded by a fiery, phoenix-like aura. The attack causes a powerful, fiery explosion. It was the elf queen, Markria Hashian Karuja, who fired the shot. She asks what's going on. The elder informs her that a human has attacked them. The queen concludes that her fears have come true and that this place is no longer safe. Kettle tries to talk to her, hoping she'll be the one to listen. The elder is stunned that Kettle is still standing after taking a direct hit from the queen. The queen asks Kettle if he's another powerful enemy who's come to harm them. She declares that humans are despicable creatures and introduces herself as the queen of the Leaf tribe. She aims a glowing arrow at him, vowing that he'll pay dearly for daring to covet them. Kettle is getting frustrated, wondering why they can't just talk even though they speak the same language. Is she deliberately ignoring him, or are relations between humans and elves just this bad? He decides that force is unavoidable, remembering the lesson he learned in the snowfield. If they don't listen, beat them until they do. The queen releases her magical arrow. It transforms into a massive spectral dragon head and barrels towards Kettle. Kettle prepares to counter, gathering energy in his fist. He punches the spectral dragon, creating a massive explosion. The queen is shocked by the result. Kettle looks at his fist and comments with a bit of regret that he might have overdone it as the queen is thrown backward. She falls to the ground, defeated. Kettle thinks that maybe he should have held back more. From that brief exchange, the queen realizes her opponent is incredibly strong, at least at a transcendent level. She wonders why someone so powerful is here. Recognizing his strength, the elf queen orders her people to evacuate the area immediately. The elves withdraw on her command. The queen tells Kettle that she acknowledges his strength but assures him he'll never achieve his goal. Kettle is just thinking that this whole situation has become a complete disaster when all he wanted to do was talk. The queen begins to chant a powerful spell, summoning a horned being that carries the purest flame. She summons a great spirit in the form of a flaming bull named Vigo. Kettle is filled with excitement. The creatures in the snowfield were all terrifying and bizarre, but this is a real summoning. He remembers that while some creatures in the snowfield looked kind of like fantasy creatures, most were just hideous. But this thing in front of him, a bull with flaming horns, is completely different. He thinks excitedly that this is a true spirit, this is true fantasy. The queen orders Vigo to eliminate the enemy, but the high-level fire spirit just mutters that summoning contracts are a pain. The queen tells him to be quiet. She thinks to herself that powerful spirits are usually old and arrogant and that she never would have been able to make this contract without help from another tribe. She never expected to have to summon him like this. She again orders Vigo to fulfill his contract. Vigo asks if the contract is to kill the human in front of him, but then he hesitates when he notices something strange about Kettle. He looks at Kettle's intimidating aura and wonders if he's really human. Meanwhile, Kettle is still just mesmerized by the fantasy scene before he realizes with disappointment that the human who's supposed to be killed is him. Vigo scoffs at the idea of a human coveting a race of nature and decides he'll burn him to a crisp. Vigo charges towards Kettle. Kettle braces for the attack. Suddenly, the queen flinches from the impact of a shockwave. When she opens her eyes, she's shocked to see that Kettle has easily blocked Vigo's attack and has him by the horn. Kettle smiles, thinking that he feels more at ease seeing a monstrous form because he doesn't have to hesitate to beat it to a pulp. The queen watches in horror. Kettle unleashes a devastating attack that causes a massive explosion, destroying the forest, the surrounding rocks, and its echo reaches the atmosphere. The queen screams from the force of the blast. The green forest is now a huge crater, and the queen looks on in disbelief. Kettle walks toward the defeated queen in the middle of the crater and approaches her. The defeated elf queen begs him to at least spare her people. Kettle calmly assures her that he is not their enemy. The queen is shocked, unable to speak. After a long talk, the elves finally accept that he wasn't really their enemy. The queen offers a formal apology to Kettle, admitting they were too quick to judge him. She feels deep regret, realizing how rude they were when they mistook the person who returned the lost child for an enemy. Kettle tells her he understands their position, especially since they were driven from their homes by humans, but he admits he was sad that no one would listen to him. The queen confirms with him again that he wasn't one of the humans chasing them, and Kettle explains that this is the first time he's ever seen an elf, as there are none in the white snowfield. The queen is shocked at the mention of the snowfield and recognizes him as the Ashen Barbarian. Kettle confirms that's the name strangers call him. The queen expresses her disbelief, having thought it was impossible for humans to survive there. She asks him worriedly if his coming from there means that others can come too. Kettle answers that he doesn't know for sure, but he doesn't think anyone else will get out the same way he did. He explains that there are rules in the snowfield that not even powerful beings like dragons can break, and that for some reason, he was the only one able to escape through something called a quest, believing his case is a rare exception. The queen is relieved, then Kettle asks her about the state of her summoned creature. He bluntly reminds her that the bull was split in half. The queen reassures him that there's no need to worry, as spirits are beings of nature and it has simply returned to the spirit world. Feeling bad for her rudeness, she asks if he desires anything, promising to grant his wish. Kettle thinks about the concept of a spirit and asks if non-elf beings can make a contract with one. At first, the queen thinks it's impossible, but she reconsiders, stating that there are some humans close to nature who can make pacts with spirits. After thinking, she tells him that if he wishes to contract a spirit, he should go to Elfo Sagrado. She explains that this place is the sacred land of all elves where their god resides, and that he might be able to fulfill his wish there. Kettle asks if a human like him can go there. The queen replies that it might be possible with her recommendation, and offers to give him the location on the condition that he keeps it a secret. The queen's inner thoughts reveal that Elfo Sagrado is the dream destination for all who study elves. She thinks that elves never reveal its location to other races because humans pose a great danger to this sacred place. Despite this, she decides to trust him and offers him a glowing crystal. Kettle accepts it gratefully. The queen explains that even if he reaches the area, their god will surely test him, but she expresses confidence that he will succeed and wishes him a safe journey, and Kettle thanks her. The queen formally introduces herself as Markria Hashian Karuja, queen of the Leaf tribe, and asks for his name. He introduces himself as Kettle the Barbarian. Sometime later, Kettle is speeding through a forest. At the border of the Barkan territory in the kingdom of Jehenthra, the guards are panicking because of a thunderous noise and an immense power approaching them. The guard captain orders the bell to be rung and all guards to assemble immediately. Kettle suddenly arrives, his powerful landing causing a tremor that kicks up dust and debris. The guard captain is shocked by his sudden appearance. Kettle greets them and asks if they are the guards. The guards are bewildered and cautious. They wonder if he is the source of the noise and whether he is an enemy. One of the guards notices Kettle's gray hair and the scar on his chest and realizes with a shock that he might be the legendary Ashen Barbarian. As Kettle approaches them, the guards raise their weapons and warn him not to come any closer or they will attack. Kettle calmly tells them he is not their enemy and hopes they will calm down. One of the guards nervously asks him what he wants from them. Kettle points his finger in a certain direction, and the guard asks him what he means by pointing to the city gate. Kettle expresses his desire to visit their territory, and the guards are shocked by what he said. The scene shifts to a room where the guard captain asks Kettle if his purpose is merely to pass through. Kettle replies that he would like to stay for a while if possible, but he doesn't know for how long. The captain asks for his name and he replies Kettle. When the captain asks for any proof of identity or someone who can confirm his identity, Kettle says he has nothing of the sort. Kettle remembers the crest Melina gave him, recalling her words to show it to the Akasha family if he ever got out of the snowfield. He presents the crest and asks if this is sufficient. Kettle explains that it is the crest of the Akasha family and he received it from a descendant of that lineage. The captain recognizes the name as the merchant family from the kingdom of Dinian. The captain recalls hearing about a merchant family that came to the snowfield a few years ago and notes that the Akasha family's influence has grown rapidly recently after a change in the family head. Kettle asks again if the crest is enough to confirm his identity. The captain says it doesn't look fake, but it's hard to confirm since it's not from their kingdom. The captain decides that although the crest isn't a complete confirmation, it is useful. He allows Kettle to enter, but on one condition. He clarifies that the condition is to confirm that he is not a dangerous person. The captain explains that there are 3 other people with unconfirmed identities also trying to enter the territory. The condition is that Kettle must form a team with them, and they must clear a nearby dungeon to prove they pose no threat. Kettle finds this condition easier than he expected. Kettle agrees to the captain's condition, but the captain adds another one. The second condition is that after clearing the dungeon, Kettle must report all information about the operation to them. Kettle understands the captain's clever plan, to have the people with unknown identities watch each other, and through their reports he will be able to expose any suspicious ones among them. The captain changes the subject, flustered, and asks Kettle if he is really a barbarian. Kettle confirms that he is indeed a barbarian. The captain expresses his surprise, admitting he has never seen a barbarian like him before and had thought they were just an ignorant race, then ends the conversation and tells him to set off. The scene shifts to a waiting room, where a man named Alessandro Tyrannus, a supposed holy knight, complains about having to enter a dungeon with a scoundrel who takes advantage of people. A thief named Hack retorts, sarcastically asking if the old man is venting his anger on him because another thief scammed him out of all his money. Alessandro gets angry and asks how a thief dares to insult a holy knight. Cassin mocks him, questioning if real holy knights wear worn-out armor, and says if he were a real knight, he wouldn't be here in the first place. He concludes that Alessandro is just a wandering warrior and that they are both the same kind of insects. Alessandro erupts in anger and threatens to fight. Cassin scoffs at him, asking if he thinks his shabby armor will protect him. Third team member, a priestess, intervenes and asks them to stop. The priestess Highs of Kaluja expresses her concern about having to clear a dungeon with these people. The guard captain enters and tells them the minimum for entering the dungeon is 4 people and that someone else will be joining them. The priestess hopes the last person is normal, and the captain tells her she can judge for herself as he has just arrived. Kettle enters the room and the existing team members are shocked by his presence. Kettle cheerfully asks them if they are his team members. The team members react in shock. Alessandro notes his massive size. The priestess wonders if he is human, and Cassin feels the immense pressure emanating from him. Kettle says hello. The guard captain tells them they can introduce themselves while he steps out for a moment. Kettle begins by introducing himself, saying he is Kettle, a barbarian. He then asks the thief for his name, who hesitantly introduces himself as Cassin Hack. He moves on to the holy knight, who introduces himself as Alessandro Tyrannus, and Kettle asks him if he uses holy power. Alessandro nervously explains that he is a somewhat special holy knight and cannot use it. The priestess introduces herself as a priestess of Kaluja, the god of lies and deceit. Kettle asks her why her identity isn't confirmed since she is a priestess. She explains that the god she serves is not highly regarded. After the introductions are complete, the guard captain announces that if they are ready, they should set off. Silence and tension fill the air as the team makes their way. The accompanying guard announces their arrival. The guard points to the dungeon entrance. He explains that it is a 3-floor dungeon and the monsters that appear inside are undead. The objective is to clear it and find a crest inside. Kettle asks Cassin to explain the plan before they begin. He starts to explain, and when he addresses Kettle as Sir, Kettle cheerfully tells him to drop the formalities because they are comrades. Cassin assigns the roles, saying Kettle and the warrior Alessandro will form the front line while he will check for traps. He adds that the priestess will support the battle from the rear with her divine powers. Kettle agrees to the plan, which confuses Cassin. Kettle then enthusiastically announces that they will set off. The team enters the dark dungeon, with Kettle leading the way. Inside, Cassin notes the pitch-black darkness and the absence of the usual traps or keys, finding it suspiciously ordinary. Suddenly, Cassin stops the group, pointing out that there is a monster, although Kettle sees nothing. He points to the bone fragments scattered on the ground, explaining that they are skeletons that will rise and attack them if they get any closer. Cassin realized to himself that the guard captain knew about this, and that this dungeon was not just a test, but a way to get rid of troublesome outsiders. Cattle thinks about the word skeletons. Alessandro explains that skeletons are powerful monsters that keep moving even if they are injured or their limbs are cut off. He adds that their defense is high because they are made of bone, making the dungeon's difficulty higher than expected. Casson takes the lead again, telling the priestess to prepare her divine power, Alessandro to ready his shield, and Cattle to get ready as well. He explains that his role is to exploit opportunities during the fight and advises them to target the skeleton's weak point, the neck, and to strike it multiple times due to its toughness. Cattle thinks that Casson is a good leader. As soon as they advance, a skeleton rises from the ground. The team members prepare for battle, but Cattle simply raises his hand. With a single easy blow, he shatters the skeleton's skull. He then blows the magical dust off his hand. The rest of the team is completely stunned. Cattle comments to Casson that he was right, the skeletons don't move after their heads are crushed. Casson laughs nervously and explains that's not what he meant. Smashing a skeleton's bones with a single blow is nearly impossible, even for skilled swordsmen, unless they can use aura, which means Cattle's strength is beyond comprehension. Casson continues his thoughts, explaining that the only way to defeat a skeleton enhanced by dungeon magic is to repeatedly attack its neck to sever the neck bone, much like felling a tree. He concludes that what Cattle did, shattering the skeleton's head and turning it to powder with a single blow, is logically impossible. He admits to himself that he knew Cattle was strong from the first moment, but he never imagined he was this strong. The team members look at Cattle in shock, and Alessandro wonders if he is really human. Cattle simply says they should keep moving forward. The rest of the team immediately responds, agreeing nervously, and Cattle finds their sudden haste amusing. As they continue on their way, Cattle plays with a skeleton's skull. Suddenly, a large group of skeletons confronts them and everyone prepares for a tough battle. But Cattle stops them and asks for a favor. He asks to handle these skeletons himself, justifying it by saying he has some things he wants to check. The team members immediately agree, awed by his power. Cattle thanks them. Alessandro wonders what he intends to do. Cattle approaches the skeletons, finding their structure interesting. One of the skeletons begins to attack him, and he seems to be analyzing its movements and structure. He then addresses one as if it were a training partner, asking it what it will do now. The skeleton attacks him with its sword. Cattle easily dodges the blow. He then grabs the skeleton's hand and asks with a smile what it will do about this. He then breaks the skeleton's arm with his bare hands, and the skeleton is surprised by what happened and feels insulted. He then skillfully catches its fallen sword with his other hand. Cattle mocks the situation, commenting on the skeleton's ability to switch hands. When the skeleton attacks, Cattle grabs its hand again. He then breaks the blade and dismantles the skeleton's arm. The skeleton continues to attack, but Cattle dodges it with ease. He blocks the skeleton's direct blow with his hands, smiling and expressing admiration for the skeleton possessing intelligence. One of the team members groans in disbelief. Alessandro is completely stunned as he realizes the reality of Cattle's seemingly impossible strength. Alessandro thinks to himself that this is a true barbarian. Cattle removes the skeleton's skull and then crushes it under his foot. He then apologizes to the team for keeping them waiting, but the team members, now in a state of awe, tell him he can do whatever he wants. When Cattle suggests they continue, the team nervously agrees. They reach the entrance to the second floor. An exhausted Casson suggests they take a short break. Cattle agrees, much to Casson's relief. During their break, Cattle says he has some questions about the dungeon. The priestess Hayes invites him to ask. Cattle begins his talk by shyly admitting that he lacks a lot of knowledge. Hayes encourages him, saying that the desire to learn is a wonderful quality, and asks him what he is curious about. Cattle notes that the dungeon was very close to the territory. He asks if the presence of dungeons and monsters near where people live isn't a problem. Hayes explains that dungeon monsters don't usually come out, and that although there are exceptions, they are dealt with beforehand. Casson adds that dungeons appear naturally, sometimes as caves or towers. He points out that most of them appear near large population centers. Hayes adds that when a dungeon appears, the territory assesses its danger level, and then people like them are sent to deal with it. Cattle asks if they appear within the territory itself, and the priestess clarifies that they appear at a certain distance from populated areas. Cattle then asks if there is a reward for successfully clearing the dungeon. Hayes confirms this, explaining that there is usually a boss on the top floor, and defeating it grants various rewards, and that the rewards in a dungeon of this level would be very good. Cattle smiles and thinks that it's like a game, and when Hayes asks him, he claims he was talking to himself. He asks one last question: who makes these dungeons? The team is taken aback by the question, and Hayes answers that they appear naturally and no one makes them. Cattle finds this strange, pointing out that they appear near population centers as if they were made to be explored. He continues his analysis, saying that they appear near where people live and lure them with rewards. He concludes that it seems too artificial to be a natural phenomenon. Hayes is astonished, realizing the truth in his words. She admits that she never thought about it before because it seemed self-evident. Casson thinks to himself that he never questioned it because it was an accepted principle in fact, and wonders how this barbarian could question such a truth. He concludes his thoughts by stating that barbarians are an ignorant and savage race, cruel and merciless beings, and that this fact has not changed. Casson continues to think to himself, wondering if this barbarian is really normal. Cattle gets the team's attention, asking them if they have rested enough. The team members nervously confirm that they have. Cattle cheerfully tells them they should set off again. The team ventures deeper into the dungeon. They encounter something and Cattle asks about it. Casson explains that it's a treasure chest, one of the labyrinth's rewards, and tells Cattle he can have it if he can open it. He adds that opening a chest of this level requires a skilled thief with a proven ability in lockpicking. Casson laments that a thief with such skill wouldn't need to enter a dungeon in the first place, suggesting they should abandon it. But Cattle simply tells Casson to open it. Casson is shocked. Cattle points out that this is a treasure chest and Casson is a thief. Kittle enthusiastically explains that opening treasure chests is the essence of a thief's work and that he is excited to see a thief's skills for himself. Casson thinks that Kittle is not wrong, but there's a problem. If he could do it, he wouldn't be here in the first place. His internal struggle reveals his lack of self-confidence. He is just a minor thief not even recognized by the Thieves Guild, and he doesn't actually possess lockpicking skills. He can't tell Kittle the truth, fearing that the anticipation in his eyes will turn to disappointment. Cattle intervenes when he sees his hesitation, asking if he is incapable of even doing this, calling him useless. Driven by fear, Casson agrees to try. As he works, he feels Cattle's piercing gaze from behind him, thinking in terror that he won't survive if he fails. He desperately tries to remember the skills he saw another thief use when he was working as his porter. He puts his life on the line and focuses with all his might. Cattle looks at him, puzzled by this intense effort. With a click, Casson succeeds, announcing with tears in his eyes that the chest is open. Heise expresses her genuine admiration, saying it's amazing and that she never expected to see a skilled thief open a treasure chest herself. Cattle congratulates him on his impressive work. Casson goes through a moment of existential crisis. He had always prided himself on doing his best to survive, but at this moment he questions this belief for the first time in his life, wondering if he has truly been doing his best all this time, and with that, Casson loses his pride. Cattle asks about the value of the treasure, and Casson estimates it's enough for an average family to live comfortably for about a month. Cattle asks Casson to organize the rewards. As Casson begins to sort the treasure, he suddenly screams in terror. The team cautiously advances and continues on their way. They find another skeleton lying on the ground, and Cattle tells them to wait. Cattle notices 4 skulls, deduces there are 4 skeletons in total, and announces that he will take care of 3 of them. The team is stunned. Cattle tells them with a smile that he will leave the last skeleton for them. Casson realizes this is a real fight and a test for them, and the rest of the team understands the situation and agrees. The skeletons begin to assemble themselves from a pile of bones, a sight Casson finds terrifying. The 4 skeletons rise to face them. Casson orders everyone to engage, and the priestess Hayes begins to chant her prayer. The skeletons rush towards them. As one leaps towards Casson, Cattle grabs the rest of the skeletons, telling them not to spoil this rare scene. A skeleton attacks Alessandro, who blocks it with his shield. Alessandro dodges the attack, and Casson jumps in to attack the same skeleton. He has cast the Shadow of Illusion spell, which hits the skeleton and makes it stagger. Cattle watches and laughs, commenting that it's rare to see a textbook example of organized party combat. He eliminates the 3 skeletons in his hands and then says he can now enjoy the show. Casson continues to try and attack the skeleton. The team members realize that Cattle is testing them. The last skeleton left for the team seems confused after its comrades disappeared. Casson thinks to himself that if they show weakness, they will die. After the battle ends, the team appears extremely exhausted. Cattle thinks that those who came to the snowfield were all strong. The team advances, and although the monsters on the 3rd floor were also skeletons, thanks to Cattle's leadership, they progressed without much difficulty until they finally reach their destination. They arrive at the deepest room of the dungeon. There they find the dungeon boss, a skeletal knight sitting on a throne. Hayes is shocked, wondering why such a being is here. Cattle asks if this monster is different from the others, and Hayes confirms that it is very strong. She explains that the skeletal knight is an opponent that can only be faced by those at the knight level, and this monster is beyond their ability to handle, then asks what would happen if they decided to turn back. Casson explains that in that case, the territory would conduct an investigation, and if they found the decision was reasonable, the matter would usually be resolved without issues. Cattle describes the team's decision to withdraw as reasonable. The skeletal knight sitting on its throne radiates an ominous energy. Cattle approaches it, admiring that it's a skeleton that can maintain its own form. The skeletal knight rises from its throne and draws its sword. Hayes warns of its danger. She tries to block the blow it unleashed with a shield, but it shatters, so Alessandro intervenes to block the blow with his shield. The shockwave knocks the team members back, but Cattle remains standing unaffected. Alessandro expresses his disbelief at the power of that single attack. The skeletal knight rushes towards Cattle. Cattle calmly watches its approach. With a single blow, he completely obliterates it, and the skeletal knight shatters entirely. The rest of the team is completely stunned. Cattle dusts off his hands and simply asks if that's all. A new treasure chest appears, and Cattle calls out to Casson. He asks if he can open it, and Casson replies in a panic that it's impossible because it's protected by a high-level lock beyond his skills. Cattle comments that it's a shame, and Casson agrees that they should abandon the chest. Cattle ignores this and prepares to smash the chest open by force, shocking Casson. With a powerful blow, Cattle shatters the chest and opens it. Cattle comments that the reward might be bigger this way, and asks Casson to collect the loot. Casson thinks to himself that he has never heard of smashing a treasure chest by force and wonders why Cattle asked him to open the first chest if he could simply smash it. They exit the dungeon, which begins to disappear. Casson explains that when a dungeon is fully cleared, it disappears, and he concludes that there was no secret room this time. The concept of a secret room interests Cattle, and Casson tells him they exist but are rare, which Cattle finds interesting. The guard captain is waiting for them, shocked at their swift return. The captain asks about the dungeon, and Cattle replies that it was very satisfying. The captain tells them he will follow the exit procedures and asks them to accompany him one by one. The priestess is questioned first, and she reports no major problems. The guard captain asks her if she thinks the barbarian can stay in the territory. The guard captain thinks to himself, hesitant about the decision to let the barbarian stay, nodding that his ambiguity only shows when he is talked about. He concludes that clearing the dungeon was just a means, and the real goal was to expose dangerous individuals. During Casson's questioning, he mentions that Kettle doesn't seem like the type to cause trouble. Alessandro reports that the barbarian is brutally strong but hasn't harmed anyone, concluding that he is completely different from ordinary barbarians. When Kettle is questioned, he praises his team members, commending Casson for his excellent work in disarming traps and trying to open the chest, Alessandro for holding the front line as a warrior, and he has his prayers that supported them in battle. The captain finds this mutual praise unusual, as strangers forced to work together usually don't end up praising each other. The captain makes his decision and grants them permission to enter, but warns them they will be expelled if they cause any trouble. He then gives them the reward for clearing the dungeon and asks them to divide it among themselves, which impresses Casson, who notes that guards sometimes seize the reward for themselves. Cattle cheerfully announces that the reward should be divided fairly. The other members are confused and refuse their share, saying they are fine without it. But Cattle insists that they cleared the dungeon as a team, so the reward must be shared fairly, and he accepts no objections. He then enthusiastically suggests they celebrate by drinking at a nearby tavern. The team nervously agrees, but they are actually terrified and wish they could just go home safely. As the team enters the territory, the captain thinks about the report he will file, focusing on the fact that a barbarian eliminated a skeletal knight in a single blow. He concludes that Kettle is no ordinary barbarian but brutally strong, at least at the knight level, and that he is an anomalous and legendary being. The captain orders one of his subordinates to guard the gate while he goes to report to the Lord. The captain enters the throne room to deliver his report. The Lord of the Barkin territory, Luke Barkin, asks him about the matter. The captain informs him of the appearance of a barbarian in the territory. When the Lord asks if he granted him permission to enter, the captain confirms, explaining that he saw no major problem with him. The Lord asks what the problem is then. The captain explains that the problem is that the barbarian is so strong he might pose a problem. The Lord asks how strong he is. The captain tells him he eliminated a skeletal knight in a single blow. The Lord repeats this information, nodding that defeating such a monster requires at least the strength of a knight. He reflects on the nature of barbarians as simple, uneducated beings who solve everything with brute force. He concludes that Quettle is at least first rank, and the captain confirms this is the most likely scenario, without ruling out the possibility of him being even stronger. The Lord considers that the presence of a warrior this powerful, a barbarian who believes might is right, will cause a headache. He orders him to be summoned. He explains that the mere presence of someone so powerful wandering the territory is a risk in itself, and that he would rather see him for himself despite the potential danger. When the captain expresses concern for the Lord's safety, the latter reassures him that he has his own knight. A huge armored knight appears behind the throne, shocking the captain. Lord Barkin asks his knight for his opinion. The knight confidently replies that although Cattle may be strong, he is still just an ignorant barbarian and would be no match for his swordsmanship skills, which he learned directly from a great sword master. The Lord decides he will speak with Barbarian himself and orders him to be summoned. Meanwhile, Cattle is celebrating with his team in a tavern. The rest of the team looks completely exhausted by Cattle's massive appetite for food and drink. Cattle comments that the food is delicious and the place is quiet and tells them to eat whatever they like on his tab. He turns to Alessandro and verifies that he is a paladin. He then asks him what kind of holy power he uses, because he didn't see him use any in the dungeon. Alessandro nervously explains that he is still in the training phase and his divine power has not yet awakened. Kettle comments that this is a pity, and then asks the priestess Hayes if there is a temple for her god Kaluja nearby. Hayes replies that she doesn't think so because her god is not widely welcomed. It is explained that Kaluja is the god of lies and deceit, an outcast and rejected deity by the general populace. Hayes asks Kettle how strong he really is. Kettle replies that he is unsure of his rank because he has only recently left the snowfield, and in turn asks them about the strength of the skeletal knight. Hayes explains that to face a skeletal knight, one must be at least second rank, and to defeat it in a single blow as Cattle did, one must be first rank. Cattle concludes that his power level is considered second rank. At that moment, the panicked tavern owner interrupts them, announcing that the tavern is about to close, terrified by the barbarian's presence. Cattle apologizes and asks everyone to leave. When he asks them if they have other plans, they all assert in a panic that they are very busy. Cattle expresses his regret and bids them farewell, hoping to see them again, but their collective thought is that they never want to see him again. Later, Cattle is resting in a bed at an inn. He is grateful that he could afford the inn thanks to the dungeon rewards. He considers this place a paradise compared to the snowfield. He thinks about his long journey to reach civilization and his desire to explore more. He decides he wants to go on an adventure and considers destinations like the Elf Sanctuary, the Tower of Magic, and the Royal Capital. He is awakened by a violent knock on the door. The guard captain is at the door and apologizes for waking him. The captain informs him that the Lord wants to see him personally. Kettle is interested that the master of this land wants to meet him. He cheerfully agrees. As he gets dressed, the captain is puzzled by his easy agreement, wondering if he has come to the right place. As Kettle walks through the territory, which he had only seen at night before, he finds the daytime scene absolutely wonderful. He thinks happily that if this is the kind of lucky fantasy he's going to have, he welcomes it anytime. The accompanying guard is bewildered and decides he should distract Kettle as much as possible. The guard captain announces the barbarian's arrival to the Lord, who orders him to be brought in. Kettle enters the throne room. Lord Luke Barkin, the master of the Barkin territory in the kingdom of Jehenthra, welcomes him. They shake hands and Kettle expresses his pleasure at meeting the rightful lord of the territory. He introduces himself as Kettle the Barbarian. The guard is shocked to see a barbarian bowing his head. The lord thinks that barbarians never bow their heads because strength is everything to them, and sarcastically comments that if one lives long enough, one will see everything. The lord comments that Kettle has learned proper etiquette and invites him to sit. Kettle contemplates the design of the lord's castle. He notices the knight guarding the lord and compares the castle to those of the medieval era. He is amazed to see a real knight, just as he had imagined as a child, but the knight was emitting a clear and strong killing intent. The knight thinks that Kettle is a fool for showing such an aura in the lord's presence and vows that he will not leave here alive. The lord tells Kettle that the reason for his summons is simple. He wants to confirm a few things. Kettle agrees and asks what the lord wants to confirm. When the lord asks about his origin, Kettle replies that he came from the coldest place in the world, a world covered in white. He specifies that he came from the white snowfield, which shocks the lord and his knight. The lord realizes that Kettle is truly a barbarian from the legends, a fact that is hard to accept. Kettle adds that it was a horrific place, and whether the lord accepts this fact or not is his choice. The lord changes the subject and asks a different question about how strong Kettle is. Kettle rephrases the question, saying what matters is how dangerous his strength is. He answers that it's the wrong question because he doesn't know the standards outside the snowfield. The lord suggests a way to find out his strength, a duel with one of his knights with the promise of a handsome reward. Kettle repeats the word duel, and the lord confirms it will not be a battle to the death. Kettle smiles and says he likes the idea, feeling excited at the mere thought of dueling a knight. His thoughts reveal his immense excitement, not just to duel a knight, but a knight from a fantasy world, a being who uses mysterious power and aura. Kettle thinks excitedly that he is really looking forward to this duel, considering it a chance to witness a real knight's skills up close. In contrast, Lord Barkin thinks that, despite Kettle's politeness, a barbarian remains a barbarian, and his beastly nature that enjoys fighting does not change. The two combatants find themselves in a large dueling arena. The Lord announces the start of the match, expressing his hope that no blood will be shed. The knight arrogantly tells Kettle to consider it an honor to witness his swordsmanship. Kettle replies that he certainly hopes so. The knight is angered by Kettle's calmness and vows to show him the vast difference in skill. The knight launches his attack, his sword seemingly multiplying into 3. Kettle is surprised by this technique and realizes it is not just an illusion and that the 3 swords are real and wonders if this is swordsmanship. The knight is impressed by Kettle's ability to dodge his attack by a narrow margin but sees no need to follow up. With a simple flick of Kettle's finger, the sword shatters and the knight is confused, wondering what that was. Before he can realize it, Kettle grabs his face. He throws him away and the knight is defeated in a single blow. The Lord is in absolute shock, realizing that a first-ranked knight has been defeated in a single blow and marvels at Kettle's overwhelming power. Kettle asks if the match is over. The shocked Lord confirms it is. The Lord assesses the situation in his mind. A barbarian defeats a first-ranked knight in a single blow. His power is monstrous, at least at a supernatural level, and the depth of his power is still unknown. He concludes that a barbarian with such power could upset the balance of power in the world. He decides it is time to inform that person, one of the few people in the world who holds the title of Swordmaster. The Lord contemplates the Swordmaster's arrival, wondering if he will be interested in the matter. Suddenly, a white-haired old man appears in the Lord's room. The Lord laughs, saying that the Swordmaster's tastes are as strange as ever, and the other replies that one needs some entertainment in life. The Swordmaster, who is called Kane, asks the Lord to tell him about this interesting matter. Lord Barkin welcomes Swordmaster Kane, expressing his honor at his visit on such short notice. Meanwhile, the knight who faced Kettle is recovering in his bed. The Lord visits him and asks about his health. The knight apologizes and says he will be fine in a few days. Swordmaster Kane appears and scolds his student, saying he should be apologizing to him for losing to an unknown barbarian. Kane examines his student, noting that he has no injuries. He thinks that he saw his student's armor completely shattered, and given his condition, it would have been normal for him to die, yet his body is intact. Kane wonders if the barbarian deliberately controlled his power. The Lord agrees, adding that Cattle is not just a reckless barbarian but can control his power with amazing precision. Kane concludes that showing such restraint means Cattle's power far exceeds the knight's level, and that he is at least at a supernatural level. Kane sinks into deep thought. Lord Barkin asks for his opinion, comparing Cattle's strength to his own. Kane confidently replies that despite Cattle's strength, he is a sword master and that even supernatural power cannot reach him. However, Kane notes that Cattle did not use aura and yet possess such immense power. He agrees that this is impossible through normal means and wonders if this is the power of the barbarians of the White Snowfield. The Lord says he didn't believe it at first, but it seems to be true. Kane reflects on the idea of a legendary human coming from the White Snowfield. He wonders if Quettle is truly human or perhaps of another race, but he dismisses the idea of him being from another race. He reasons that if he were, he would not have shown any consideration for humans by sparing the knight's life, and concludes that this must be a misjudgment on his part. Kane is still concerned about the fact that Quettle came specifically from the White Snowfield and wonders why he appeared from there, of all places, at this particular time. When the Lord asks him if something is wrong, Kane dismisses it as a matter for another time, grumbling about the strange request the Emperor always makes. He reassures the Lord that it's nothing to worry about for now. Kane asks if the barbarian is still in the territory, and the Lord confirms he is. Kane decides he must confirm things for himself. Later, the guard captain asks Kettle about his future plans. The captain gives Kettle his reward for the duel and informs him that the Lord will no longer interfere with his activities within the territory. Kettle thinks that although his plans are not set, it would be good to have an officially recognized identity to avoid future trouble. The captain explains that there are ways to achieve this, either get a high-level sponsor or become a mercenary. He elaborates that if he builds a record of achievements as a mercenary and gets recognition from the guild, his identity can be officially recognized. The guard captain thinks that getting a sponsor is the more suitable path for someone with this barbarian strength, as low-rank mercenaries are treated as mere errand boys. But Cattle is charmed by the idea of being a mercenary, who takes requests and kills monsters, considering it the essence of fantasy romance. He asks where he should go to become a mercenary, and the captain tells him there is a guild hall. He eagerly asks the captain to guide him, and the bewildered captain agrees. The narrative explains that although some see mercenaries as romantic figures, they actually represent the lowest rung of society for those without official status. Even the strong ones often die in undiscovered dungeons or become scapegoats for dirty work. Upon arriving at the mercenary guild, he finds the place in chaos due to a violent brawl, with two mercenaries cursing at each other while onlookers bet on the fight. Nearby, a woman asks the receptionist Rosa about the new recruits. Rosa sighs, saying they are all weirdos and hopeless. She mentally lists the new recruits: a madman claiming to be a holy knight, a thief, and a nun no one trusts because of the god she worships. Rosa laments that no respectable people have shown up and wishes for a handsome prince on a white horse to save her from her job. At that moment, Cattle enters the guild, surprising her. Cattle surveys the place and recognizes it as the guild hall. The fight immediately stops and everyone stares at the barbarian in shock. Cattle approaches the reception desk and announces his desire to become a mercenary. A flustered Rosa asks him his purpose for doing so. Cattle explains that he has various reasons, but he heard he could get official status by working as a mercenary. Rosa confirms this but warns him that he will need a solid track record of achievements. Cattle agrees, so Rosa registers him for 5 silver coins, asking for his name and age. He gives his name as Cattle but doesn't know his age, so she jots down an approximate one. After completing the registration, she gives him his mercenary tag, warning him not to lose it as it symbolizes his status. Cattle accepts the tag. He immediately asks about available quests, expressing his desire to start right away. Rosa shows him the list of quests available to him. Cattle is surprised to find that the list only contains F-rank quests, such as gathering herbs, cleaning basements, sewers and streets, and night watch patrols. Rosa nervously explains that as he is currently an F-rank mercenary, these are the only tasks available to him, and she is worried he might get angry because of his pride as a barbarian. As she begins to explain that he will be able to take on harder tasks after building a work record, Cattle interrupts her, saying he will take one of the quests. He points to the herb gathering quest. Rosa is surprised and asks if he is sure, and Cattle replies that as long as it's a job that needs to be done, there's no problem. Cattle asks where to find the herbs required for his quest. The receptionist, Rosa, explains that he will need to go out of the village and shows him a picture of the required plant. Cattle confirms his understanding and says he will be back soon, to which Rosa hesitantly replies. Rosa is left bewildered by his calmness and acceptance. In the forest, Cattle contemplates the image of the herb and wonders if it is used for treating wounds, noting its strange appearance. He decides to begin his first mission as a mercenary. About an hour later, Cattle returns to the mercenary guild. He presents a huge pile of herbs and asks if this quantity is enough. Rosa is shocked by the large amount. When she examines the herbs, she is surprised by their excellent condition, noting that most mercenaries pick them carelessly. Cattle proudly declares that, despite his appearance, he is quite confident in his delicate touch. Rosa thanks him for his hard work and gives him his reward, a single silver coin. Cattle realizes that this amount is barely enough to buy the cheapest meal. However, he feels deeply moved, as this is the first money he has honestly earned through labor. He tells the astonished Rosa that he is very satisfied and asks if he can take another mission immediately. Rosa is confused, believing it's impossible for him to be happy with such a meager reward. Cattle explains that he wants to work as much as possible, as long as the day is not yet over. Rosa wonders why he seems so happy. She comes to the conclusion that this new mercenary is also a weirdo. Time passes and Cattle chooses the warehouse cleaning mission for the day. Rosa notes that this is his third cleaning mission after gathering herbs and wonders in confusion if barbarians like to clean. Hesitantly, Rosa approves his request. Cattle arrives at the warehouse and announces that he has come to clean. The warehouse owner panics upon seeing a barbarian. The task of cleaning the warehouse and moving the goods was easy for him. His next task was street sweeping. Although controlling his strength was difficult at first, he completed the task without major issues. Someone was watching him from afar through a scope. The observer wonders why Cattle is acting this way, as he is aware that Cattle is at least supernaturally strong, a man whose power could affect an entire kingdom. The observer continues to think in confusion. This barbarian, who is supposed to solve everything with force, is doing menial jobs. What's stranger is that he's not doing them half-heartedly, but taking them seriously. While the observer is completely bewildered, Cattle feels satisfaction and accomplishment from his simple work. Later, Cattle receives his pay. Rosa tells him this is his reward for completing 15 missions, which is 15 silver coins. Cattle thanks her and tells her he will be back the next day to start his second day in civilization. Cattle walks through the city, enjoying the sights of daily life. He spots a building that turns out to be a library. When he enters, the librarian panics. He asks her if she minds him reading some books, which only increases her terror. Cattle begins to read quietly. The swordmaster watches him in confusion, wondering if the barbarians of the snowfield are more civilized than others. Cattle discovers from a history book that the Empire has won the war. He connects this information to Melina's visit a few years ago, who is on her way to sell weapons to the kingdom that lost the war. He reads that the Empire is now a dominant power, and that the kingdom of Barkin, where he is essentially a vassal state. The book goes on to explain that the Empire has swallowed half of the human world and continues its aggressive expansion. Cattle thinks about the idea of world domination. He decides that's enough of human affairs and turns to what he really wanted to study: non-human races. He picks up a book that collects information on non-humans, realizing that the fantasies written in it are existing realities in this world. Kettle continues his reading, learning about Manta-Mi, the tunnels of the dwarves, and the richest caves in the world. He reads about the fairy village Pizarabia and the sky city of the celestials Legmeria. Then he reads about Elfo Sagrado, the sacred sanctuary of all elves whose location no one knows. Kettle thinks that thanks to the information he got from the Elf Queen, he now has what it takes to enter this sanctuary. He is surprised to read that there are other places similar to the White Snowfield. The book describes demonic realms, places that do not allow human presence and are filled with twisted and deformed beings, and mentions that there are 5 particularly vast realms. These 5 realms are the Silent Forest, the Abyss, the Deep Sea, the Bottomless Pit, and the White Snowfield. The book states that terrifying beings called the Others inhabit these realms but cannot cross over into the human world. Cattle marvels at the vastness of this world, as the Snowfield alone was immense. He decides that this is all he can learn here and prepares to leave. He thanks the terrified librarian, who stammers a reply. Later, Cattle returns to the mercenary guild and asks Rosa about today's missions. Rosa hands him the quest list. Meanwhile, Swordmaster Kane, who has been observing Cattle for the second day, concludes that he is truly strange and decides he must meet him personally. Later that evening, Kettle walks happily, having completed another 12 missions. He thinks that the small tasks are accumulating, and at this rate, the day he is recognized as a true mercenary will come soon. Suddenly, he feels someone following him and stops. He turns to face a hooded figure, Kane. Kane is shocked that Kettle noticed him. Kettle asks the person who has been following him all day about their purpose. Kane thinks to himself how Kettle could have possibly noticed him. He is stunned because he had concealed his presence with aura, something that even those with the sharpest senses are not supposed to notice. When Kettle sees the hooded figure's silence, he assumes it's a thief and prepares to fight, which confuses Kane. Kettle thinks that even in safe places there are thieves. Kane panics, thinking that Kettle won't believe him if he tells him he is a swordmaster. In contrast, Kettle sees this thief as an opportunity to get a good achievement for his mercenary record. Kane is bewildered by the misunderstanding. He then realizes that this situation could be a good opportunity. Since Kettle is mistaking him for a thief, he can use the direct confrontation to learn about his true strength and identity. The confrontation between Kettle and Kane begins. Suddenly, Kettle disappears from before Kane's eyes. Kettle instantly appears behind Kane, who is shocked. Kane realizes that if he had stayed put, Cattle would have grabbed him by the neck. Kane uses a burst of energy to quickly move away, and Cattle comments on his speed. Kane is shocked, realizing he was almost caught, and even more surprisingly, he felt no flow of aura from Cattle. Cattle finds it interesting that Kane was able to move so quickly with a purely human body. Kane decides this is no longer a test and that he will use his full power. Kane attacks, but Cattle easily dodges him. Kane is shocked again because he couldn't react even after expanding his senses. Cattle grabs Kane's arm, who feels an immense force as if his whole body is being pulled by force. In pain and unable to match him in strength, Kane decides to release his full power. Green light mana envelops Kane's body, surprising Cattle. The force compels him to retreat while Kane looks at the energy in his hand. Cattle still believes Kane is a thief and comments that thieves these days have various techniques. Kane tells him to stop this nonsense. Kane thinks to himself how Cattle is mistaking manifested mana, a level only the best can reach, for a thief's technique. He concludes that Cattle genuinely believes this. Kane explains to himself that manifested mana can tear through solid steel and a human body should be torn apart on contact, but Cattle didn't get a single scratch. Kane marvels at Cattle's ability to withstand it with his bare body, while Cattle comments that Kane is using something interesting. Kane decides to end it and draws his sword, but Cattle stops him with his finger before he can draw it. Kane tries to pull the sword with all his might against Cattle's finger, but he is unable and is shocked and desperate, realizing that this is the end of the line for him. Cattle looks at the defeated Kane, thinking that this is what thieves are like in this fantasy world. The guard captain arrives at the scene completely confused, wondering what is happening and why Swordmaster Kane is here. When he sees the scene, he assumes the Barbarian has attacked the Swordmaster. Cattle tells him that he has caught this thief. Then, holding the defeated Kane, he asks if turning him over to the guards will count as work experience as a mercenary. The guard captain watches the scene in shock, disbelieving that Swordmaster Kane, someone who has reached the rank of the Transcendent, has been captured in such a humiliating way by the Barbarian. The captain tries to explain that Kane is not a thief, while Cattle assumes they are acquaintances. The guard pays his respects to Swordmaster Kane, the only swordmaster in the kingdom of Gehentra. Cattle asks in confusion if this thief holds such a great title. He insists that Kane is a thief who attacked him for his silver coins. The captain asserts that this person is the swordmaster and that he couldn't mistake his face, to which Cattle replies by asking if he is a magician using a disguise spell. The captain replies that a high-level magician who could do such a thing would be respected just as much as a swordmaster, prompting Cattle to wonder if swordmaster is just another name for thieves. The captain once again affirms that Kane is truly the swordmaster. The captain decides he must report this matter to the Lord. The Lord is shocked, wondering if Master Kane has lost. Later, Cattle feels regretful, thinking he should have listened to the whole story. Kane also admits fault, saying the blame is on him for not saying anything, and the two sit in an atmosphere of mutual regret. The Lord thinks to himself, disbelieving that Kane was defeated by the Barbarian. He concludes that this Barbarian is stronger than the Swordmaster. He analyzes the situation, noting that although there are different levels among the Transcendent, and Kane might be at the lowest rank among them, the defeat of a Swordmaster by a Barbarian is unbelievable. This means Kettle is an uncontrollable force. The Lord finds the situation exhausting and decides to step aside and let the two talk to clear up the misunderstanding between them. He leaves them to talk quietly. Kane reflects on his complete defeat, feeling humiliated and exhausted. He formally introduces himself as Kane, the Swordmaster. When Kettle asks if Swordmaster is his family name, Kane explains that once one reaches this rank, human titles lose their meaning. Cattle understands and asks if the technique he used was a Swordmaster's technique. Kane displays his aura and Cattle is impressed, declaring that now that he knows it's a Swordmaster's technique, he finds it wonderful. Kane explains that this is the manifestation of mysticism, also known as aura. Cattle realizes the green energy he saw earlier was aura. He eagerly asks how to use it. Kane explains that mysticism must be controlled and manifested. Cattle asks if mysticism is like mana. Kane clarifies that mysticism is the mysterious energy itself. If you use it as mana, you become a magician, while handling it as aura is what makes a swordsman. After understanding that both mages and swordsmen use mysticism, Cattle shyly admits that he still lacks knowledge and asks Kane to teach him his technique. He insistently asks Kane to teach him. Kane is surprised by the request, asking why he is asking for guidance when he is the stronger one. Cattle replies that if Kane had used his sword in their fight, the outcome might have been different. Cattle expresses his excitement to learn, while Kane worries for his pride, anticipating it might be shattered further. Cattle thinks that what he learned of basic swordsmanship in his past life does not compare to this art. This is the true fantasy swordsmanship that uses mysterious aura. Kane begins to explain, stating that the hallmark of his school of swordsmanship is the embodiment of illusion and reality, and asks Cattle what he saw when he fought his student. Cattle realizes the knight he defeated was Kane's student and describes how his sword strikes split into 3 real attacks. Cattle understands that this is what is meant by embodiment. Kane explains that his style focuses more on technique than raw power. He adds that swordsmanship is the art of fusing the sword with aura to use mysticism, and one who reaches the end of this path is called a sword master. Cattle is fascinated by the aura, while Kane still can't believe he is teaching a barbarian. Kane decides to show him directly instead of explaining. Kane demonstrates his technique, delivering a powerful sword strike. Cattle observes that the single sword strike has split into 5 strikes. Kane explains explains that while many techniques use aura to create illusions, his style alone makes those illusions real. When he asks for his opinion on the skill, Cattle confidently replies that he thinks he can do it too. Kane is shocked and calls his words nonsense. Kane thinks that he dedicated his entire life to reaching this level and that it's impossible for Cattle to imitate it just by seeing it once. Cattle says it's faster to simply show him and grabs an axe. He takes a stance and attacks, moving the axe with immense speed. At first, Kane thinks it's just fast movements based on brute force, but the attack leaves 5 real marks on the wall, mimicking the effect of Kane's technique. Smoke rises from Cattle's axe, and he then asks Kane for his opinion. Kane admits to himself that the effect was similar to his technique, although it was produced only by immense speed and power. Kane argues that what Cattle did was just a fast swing without technique, and that true swordsmanship is for actual combat. Cattle retorts by asking if the similar result isn't enough. Kane is frustrated because he knows Cattle is not wrong. In a fit of frustration, he grabs his sword and challenges Cattle again. Kane unleashes his ultimate attack, making Cattle wonder if his body is split. Kane explains that this is the body separation technique, achieved by controlling aura to its utmost limits. He challenges Cattle to imitate this technique. Cattle responds with his own attack, using his axe in a whirlwind of pure physical force which completely overwhelms Kane's technique. After Cattle's attack destroys the arena, he asks Kane for his opinion. Kane collapses to his knees in complete despair. He is devastated, crying that his swordsmanship and everything he has built his entire life has become meaningless, and he finds this situation unbelievable. Cattle notes that Kane is more mentally fragile than he thought. Cattle approaches the defeated Kane and praises his swordsmanship, downplaying his own ability by saying he was just swinging his axe very fast and that it's not real swordsmanship. Kane realizes Cattle is right, admitting that Cattle's technique was real and not just a deceptive image, and that he himself could never reach that level of mysticism. Kane begins to compose himself, convincing himself that his swordsmanship is still very valuable because he is the only one who can embody illusion and reality. He enthusiastically declares that his swordsmanship is flawless and that the Barbarian is simply insane. He shouts that for someone to move fast enough to create a real illusion without aura is beyond human limits. Seeing this emotional outburst, Cattle asks if Kane can teach him the true meaning of technique. Kane apologizes for his outburst, and Cattle replies that he understands. Kane begins his lesson explaining that to use true technique, one must first learn to control aura. But to do that, one must first understand mysticism. He explains that no mage, swordsman, or sorcerer can reach a high level without understanding mysticism, and that believers in gods are the only ones who can bypass this. Cattle asks if divine power is something separate. Kane confirms this, explaining that miracles are granted directly from the gods and are not tied to personal abilities. Kettle says he understands. Kane defines mysticism as the mysterious power within oneself, and how it is used is what determines everything. He explains that to use aura, acquire mana, or control spirits, one must first understand this mysticism. He mentions that there are 5 stages of mysticism, the simplest of which is unveiling the mystery, a state of knowing, perceiving, and sensing it. When Kettle asks if anyone can feel it, Kane answers no, explaining that if one is not gifted, one cannot even sense it. He adds that those who can sense it are called third rank. He explains that there are 5 levels granted based on the ability to handle mysticism. He lists the 5 general classifications: third rank, second rank, first rank, transcendent, and hero. Cattle suddenly remembers his conversation with Melina, realizing this is what she was talking about. Kane explains that the ranking system is just a convenience, and that the gap between each level is enormous. Cattle confirms his understanding, and Kane announces the start of the lesson. Kane declares that the first stage is unveiling the mystery. He instructs Cattle to expand his senses to their utmost limit to feel the mystery, explaining that it means awakening senses he has never felt before. He asks him to feel the breeze, the touch of the earth, and the shifting winds to distinguish the unique movements within them. Cattle contemplates trying to follow the instructions, but he opens his eyes and says he feels nothing. Kane is surprised, admitting he thought someone as strong as Cattle would feel it easily. He explains that the physically strong often have a better chance of sensing the mystery, but he assumes Cattle might be an exception. He wonders if it has to do with the peculiarity of the white snowfield. Cattle replies that he doesn't know, and that no one he knew in the snowfield had ever felt the mystery before. Kane decides to try another method, transferring power directly to Cattle to guide him. Cattle asks if he will transfer aura to him. Kane confirms it's similar and urges him to prepare. Kane places his hand on Cattle and instructs him to relax his body and focus his senses inward to feel the flowing power. But Kane is shocked, wondering what kind of body this is and if it is truly human. He thinks that Cattle's body feels like solid rock due to the density of his muscles. When Cattle notices his hesitation, Kane apologizes and says he will begin. Kane starts to transfer aura, believing that what's important is to awaken the latent mystery, but he is shocked again, realizing he cannot find the mysterious path within Cattle's body. He corrects himself, saying he cannot reach it. He describes the experience as diving into a bottomless sea where his aura touches nothing, or like pressing through a space of overwhelming density. Kane declares that it's no use. Cattle asks worriedly if this means he lacks talent. Kane clarifies that's not it. In the end, one must find the path themselves. Cattle says he knows that, but Kane drops the bombshell that he couldn't find that path inside Cattle's body. Cattle asks in shock if this means he can't sense the mystery at all, but Kane denies it, explaining he couldn't even confirm whether the path existed or not. He explains that Cattle's body is strange, and that it is so deep and heavy that the aura couldn't properly reach its interior. Kane thinks that this is the first time he has seen something like this, where Cattle's pure physical strength prevents aura. Cattle is frustrated, wondering if even a swordmaster can't help him. Kane admits it's hard to say for sure because he couldn't confirm anything. He concludes that he couldn't even tell if the path of mystery existed within Cattle, and suggests he visit other swordmasters more skilled in handling aura, or perhaps visit the Tower of Magic for answers. Kane apologizes to Cattle. Cattle says it's fine and that this is enough for now, admitting there's still a possibility for him to learn. He thanks him, saying he learned a lot from this encounter. Kane thinks that every barbarian he has met so far has been wild, plundering non-stop and desiring only drink and violence, but this barbarian is different. Kane asks Cattle if he has ever considered settling down in this kingdom. When Cattle inquires about the meaning, Kane explains that he means declaring loyalty to the kingdom and receiving a title. He adds that with Cattle's strength, he would receive a high rank, and that Kane himself would be his sponsor. Cattle immediately refuses, declaring he doesn't want to be tied down by anything. Kane had hoped in his heart that if he could bring this barbarian to the royal palace, perhaps they could break free from the Empire's dominance. Kane tries to persuade him again, wondering if getting a noble title isn't appealing enough. Cattle replies that he will enjoy his own pleasures. Kane understands his decision and accepts it. Cattle thanks him again and promises he will not forget this favor. As Kane walks away, he thinks about the ridiculous idea he had. He thought for a moment he could control Cattle, but he realizes no one can. This barbarian acts only according to his own will and thoughts. He concludes that Kettle might be more troublesome than other barbarians because he is unpredictable. Later, Kane and Lord Barkin discuss the matter. Kane sighs, wondering what the Emperor is thinking with his desire to conquer the demonic realms. The Lord realizes that the Emperor desires this conquest. He asks if the Emperor is serious, nodding that scouts are dying in vain under the guise of reconnaissance. Kane confirms his seriousness, speculating that the Emperor might believe he is the reincarnation of the ancient Emperor. The Lord says this is a matter for the future, as they have not yet conquered all human lands. The Lord concludes that the invasion will happen one day. Kane confirms this, adding that a summons could come at any time because their region is also imperial land. Kane laments that the world is strange enough, and now the Emperor is half mad too. The Lord wonders if some rumors are true. Kane confirms the rumors are true, declaring that the demons have begun to move. He explains that although it's not confirmed, dungeons are appearing at an abnormal rate, and there are rumors that the anomaly of the demonic world has begun to leak outside. He concludes that something is happening, and it is definitely not in humanity's favor. Kane comments that perhaps the strangest thing has already arrived, referring to Cattle, and the Lord agrees with him. When Kane asks for his opinion, the Lord replies that he doesn't know. Lord Barkin concludes his final assessment of Kettle, explaining to Swordmaster Kane that at least he is not hostile towards them. But beyond that, he cannot say anything for certain. The next day, as Kettle walks around the city, he notices that people seem scared and panicked upon seeing him. He wonders if people are reacting with fear because of his clothes. Kettle completely misunderstands the situation, thinking the problem is his clothes made of animal hide, which are not considered civilized. He enthusiastically decides he will buy civilized clothes. He enters a clothing store, and the shop owner is terrified upon seeing him. When Cattle asks to buy clothes, the shop owner apologizes, saying he has nothing in his size, but suggests they could make a custom outfit for him if he gives him some time. Cattle is pleased to hear this possibility and agrees to the custom order. The shop owner tells him he will call him when it's finished. The shop owner fearfully imagines Cattle's angry reaction if he doesn't like the outfit, wondering if he will survive this encounter. While Cattle is on his way to the guild hall, he spots a small glowing blue gem on the ground. He picks it up and examines it, noting its unusual glow. He decides to ask about it at the guild hall. There, he asks Rosa if she knows what this gem is. He explains that he found it on his way here. He notes that it doesn't look like an ordinary bead, and Rosa agrees to take a look. She examines it and notes that it doesn't look like a gem and that it is polished or handmade. She notes that it has no name but seems very valuable. While examining it, a light flashes and she enters a trance-like state. Cattle snaps his fingers to get her attention and asks if she is okay. Rosa wakes up confused, and Cattle tells her it seemed like her mind was drawn to the gem, then dismisses it. Rosa feels that the gem radiates a strange energy energy and is difficult to identify and suggests having it appraised. Cattle politely declines the offer, saying he'd rather find out for himself as that's part of the fun. He changes the subject and asks about today's quests. Rosa hands him the quest list filled with simple jobs. Cattle takes the board to look at the quests. Later, after another day of work, Cattle rests, feeling satisfied with his day full of accomplishments. He examines the mysterious gem again, wondering about its true nature and function, and remembers how it affected Rosa. He suddenly hears a voice emanating from the mysterious bead, telling him to come to it. The voice echoes in his head, and he wonders if it's asking him to go somewhere. He finds it amusing that the bead is showing him a map in his mind, and wonders if this is some kind of mind control magic. After a moment of thought, he decides to go. As he is on his way, he tells the insistent voice to be quiet, assuring it that he is coming. He follows the mental map to a dark, hidden location and wonders if this is the place. A magical entrance appears before him. Kittle enters and announces his arrival, asking who called him. A sinister voice notes that another sacrifice has entered, and this time a stupid barbarian will make a good offering. An immortal sorcerer, a Lick, declares that his resurrection ritual will begin. The narrative reveals the Lick's story. In a time of ancient chaos, there was an evil sorcerer who manipulated kings and ignited wars, but his evil deeds eventually led to his exposure and defeat at the hands of heroes. Moments before his defeat, he succeeded in transferring his soul into a life vessel, thus becoming a Lick. A Lick is defined as a being that achieves immortality by embedding its soul in a life vessel. Thus, the evil sorcerer became a Lick, plotting his resurrection. To complete his resurrection, he needed a large number of souls as sacrifices, so he settled near a remote territory and scattered enchanted beads to lure victims one by one. The Lick thinks that his plan was proceeding successfully, but he is puzzled by the presence of a barbarian here as he chose a remote land to avoid attracting attention. He finds his presence unusual. The Lick concludes that Cattle's large size will make him an excellent sacrifice. The Lick explains his trap. He enchanted the beads to only attract those who are ignorant of mysticism. Therefore, he assumes Kettle is just an ordinary barbarian ignorant of mysticism, and that his lack of being affected by the magic is just an illusion. The Lick addresses Kettle, asking him to become the cornerstone of his glorious resurrection. The scene returns to Kettle arriving at huge, ominous doors. When he enters, he finds the Lick sitting on a throne. Kettle is overjoyed, realizing he is seeing a real Lick, one of the classic villains of fantasy worlds. The Lick is surprised and asks Kettle how he was not affected by the bead's magic. Upon seeing the remains of other victims, Kettle understands this is how the Lick was luring people. The Lick is confused because he cannot sense any mysticism from Kettle and concludes he is just an ordinary barbarian. He assumes Kettle must be carrying a high-quality mental defense artifact. Kettle denies having such a thing. The Lick doesn't believe him, saying he would have passed by peacefully if he had been affected by the magic. The Lick decides he will have to crush Kettle by force and summons his skeleton minions. Kettle realizes he is in a dungeon where an evil Lick is hiding and understands the general situation. With a powerful blow, he shatters a skeleton, commenting that it's weaker than he expected. The Lick gets angry and threatens to tear off his limbs, summoning more skeletons. The Lick orders them to eliminate him, but Kettle pounces on them in the blink of an eye and easily destroys them all. The Lick is shocked. Kettle confirms to himself that Cassan's advice was correct. A skeleton dies if its head is destroyed. He expresses disappointment as he was expecting the Lick to control Death Knights, not just skeletons. Angrily, the Lick prepares a stronger attack, declaring he will no longer hold back. Using his energy, he summons a new servant. A fully armored skeletal knight appears. Kettle is surprised to see another skeletal knight here. He finds it interesting, wondering if the settings of the skeletal knight the Lick creates are different. The Lick orders the knight to attack. Kettle prepares to face the skeletal knight created by the Lick. He blocks the knight's attack with his arm and launches a counterattack that shatters the knight's armor and shield. Kettle comments that this knight is indeed sturdier. The Lick orders his knight to release all its mana. The knight is surrounded by a powerful aura of energy and unleashes its full power. Kettle receives the attack. He thinks that the skeletal knight created by the Lick is a bit unusual. He then completely shatters it with a single punch. Kettle stomps on its remains and asks, "Is that all?" The Lick asks in complete shock, "What are you?" When Kettle takes a step back, the Lick interprets it as fear and tells him to be afraid. He threatens that he will pay the price for invading his sanctuary. Kettle replies in confusion, explaining that he only came because the gem summoned him, and asks the Lick if he wasn't the one who scattered those gems in the first place, leaving the Lick shocked and silent. The Lick realizes the bitter truth, that everyone who came here, including the barbarian, was lured by the gems he had scattered. The Lick, whose full name is revealed to be Cardos Praneris Kaises, yells at Kettle to be silent, boasting of his past as a great sorcerer who destroyed 5 kingdoms and faced heroes. Kettle mentally compares the Lick's long name to the elf queens, wondering if long names are in vogue in this world. The Lick ignores this and orders him to become the cornerstone of his resurrection. The Lick casts a powerful spell. Kettle recognizes it as a spell to manipulate human emotions. It is explained that this spell is a unique magic developed by Cardos, which works by extracting negative emotions and trapping the target within them, leading to the shattering of their mind. The Lick is confident, believing that a barbarian who can't even use mysticism will be completely helpless against true magic. He is puzzled about what to do with Kettle, noting that he seems seems different and isn't wearing any powerful artifacts. He decides to capture him for study and orders his skeletons to drag him away. As the skeletons approach the seemingly helpless Kettle, he easily shatters them. The Lick is shocked. He cannot understand how his mind control spell, which should have worked perfectly, failed. Kettle sarcastically asks if the Lick was done just standing and watching and then tried to use the same skeleton tactic again. He describes his methods as boring, which enrages the Lick. The Lick thinks that it is impossible for humans, even transcendent ones, to resist emotion magic. Kettle mocks him, asking if he can't use simpler spells like Fireball, which the Lick takes as an insult. The Lick begins to chant a new, more powerful spell. He unleashes a massive dark magic attack meant to swallow the world and plunge it into chaos. Kettle's eyes sparkle with excitement as he watches this spectacular magical display. The Lick orders Kettle to be devoured, and the attack completely engulfs Kettle. The Lick laughs, declaring his victory, but he suddenly starts to cough. He collapses, having exhausted all his magical energy, but confident that this final spell was enough. Kettle emerges from the dust, commenting that the attack was impressive. The Lick is completely shocked. Kettle stands before him completely unharmed and asks, "But is that all?" The Lick cannot believe that even this attack didn't work. He thinks that he used his most powerful mind control spell, which should have shattered the mind of a legendary hero. He asks in despair, "Then what are you?" Component placement, to which Kettle replies that, although the attack was flashy, he didn't feel much from it. Kettle tells the Lick that if this is all he has, it's his turn now. The Lick is shocked, realizing that Kettle came here knowing his identity. The Lick laughs insanely, assuming Kettle is an agent of the Empire, and praises their intelligence network for tracking him down so quickly. He vows that he will rise again and will rule the world once more. The Lick thinks that Kettle must be a product of the human farm he heard about in the Empire, a place for breeding specialized talents. He concludes that he is an assassin specially trained to kill him. Despite this, he screams defiantly that he will kill Kettle and overthrow the Empire. Kettle is completely bewildered, wondering if the Lick is insane. In a final desperate attempt, the Lick casts a spell and screams, demanding Kettle's body. He tries to possess Kettle's body by entering his mind. The narrative explains that this action will leave him trapped in this body for the rest of his life unless he becomes a Lick again. The Lick declares that Kettle's body is now his, but inside Kettle's mental world, the Lick is shocked and confused. He wonders if this is the Barbarian's inner world, as he has never seen anything like it before, and realizes that just being in this place is enough to corrupt and shatter the mind. The Lick screams that this is not the work of the Empire. There, his mind begins to collapse. Outside, Kettle stands in complete confusion. He thinks that the Lick was muttering some words and then suddenly collapsed. He is disappointed. While the Lick's dark aura was impressive, that was all there was to it, and he was looking forward to seeing his magic. He concludes that liches in this world are not that strong. Kettle decides to take the rewards, noticing the Lick's staff, which was glowing. He picks up the staff, wondering if it helps in casting spells and if he would be able to use magic if he kept it. He decides to keep this discovery a secret. He then spots a vase and wonders if it is the Lick's life vessel. He decides to take it to Rosa for appraisal, but he feels that something is still missing. He notices something strange in front of him that looks like a gate, wondering if there is a hidden room. He presses a mechanism on the throne and a voice responds, "Correct answer." A secret passage opens, revealing the hidden sacrifice room of the Lick Cardos. He wonders who the people inside are and where they came from. The people inside the room react with surprise and fear upon seeing him. Kettle wonders what he should do with them and for now decides to return to the territory. He believes that once he explains the situation, they will probably send someone to take care of it. Upon returning to the mercenary guild, Rosa greets him, nodding that he is back early today. Kettle confirms that something came up. He tells her it's about the gem he showed her the day before. Rosa thinks he is joking about finding a Lick, but Kettle asserts that he was not joking. Rosa is still skeptical, wondering why one of only 5 liches in the world would appear in such a secluded place. To prove his point, Kettle presents her with a ceramic pot, saying he believes it's the Lick's life vessel and asks her to appraise it. Rosa is shocked, realizing he wasn't joking. Kettle adds that there were a few people inside the Lick's hideout. He mentions that he thought about bringing them, but their souls had already departed, so he left them for now, expressing hope that the guild will send someone to handle the situation. Rosa starts connecting the dots, remembering the recent recurring disappearances in the territory, and realizes these people were likely the Lick's victims. She panics and says she will call someone immediately. A short while later, the guard captain arrives, shouting and asking about the Lick, and Kettle greets him calmly. Kettle reassures the captain that everything has been taken care of and that it was no big deal. When the captain asks for the Lick's identity and mentions the name Cardos Pranirasisis, Kettle confirms the name sounds familiar. The captain immediately recognized the name, explaining that Cardos was a sorcerer who turned the world upside down 100 years ago, causing immense chaos with his emotion-manipulating magic. He adds that he drove kings mad and brought down 5 kingdoms. Kettle explains that the Lick wasn't that impressive and that he destroyed himself while doing something strange. The captain finds it hard to believe that a legendary sorcerer like Cardos destroyed himself and asks Kettle for a clearer explanation. Kettle says he doesn't have much to add. The captain decides he must report to the Lord immediately. Later, the Lord and the captain discuss the situation. The Lord expresses his confusion about a Lick being near the territory. He wonders if it could have been another type of of monster. But the captain rules that out based on the testimonies of the rescued victims and the presence of the life vessel as evidence. The Lord considers the seriousness of having the Lick's life vessel near the territory. It is dangerous enough that the Empire will send investigators, and this is particularly worrying with Swordmaster Kane absent from the territory. He considers the whole situation a major headache. He orders a messenger to be prepared to send to the kingdom but feels they are somewhat fortunate. The guard captain agrees, nodding that if it weren't for the Barbarian discovering the Lick, their territory would have been the first victim. The Lord deduces that Cardos the Lick was likely preparing for his resurrection. He concludes that the situation was not normal at all. The Lord says that such a great deed deserves a valuable reward, but he doubts whether his territory can offer a suitable reward. The next day, a panicked servant wakes the Lord from his sleep. The servant informs him of the arrival of Lady Aquas, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, which shocks the Lord. He wonders in confusion why she has come here. The heretic inquisitor appears in all her majesty. The Lord nervously welcomes her and introduces himself. She thanks him for his hospitality. She introduces herself as Aquas, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, and it's mentioned she is the youngest to ever hold this title. It is recounted that she executed 7 sorcerers and single-handedly stopped a large-scale ritual. She is currently the most powerful heretic inquisitor on the continent, wielding authority that surpasses that of lords. Even the Empire bows to the orders of the sun god in her presence. The Lord wonders again about the reason for her presence. Aquas notes that the territory has been noisy recently. The Lord explains that a minor problem occurred in a dungeon and was resolved, concluding that her visit is not because of the Lick. When he asks her the reason for her visit, she says she came to talk about the prophecy, but she adds that before she tells him the details of the prophecy, she would first like to confirm what happened in the territory. The Lord asks her worriedly if she means the Barbarian and the Lick. She confirms it and adds that the Lick was probably Cardos Prenoros Cassis. The Lord is shocked that she knows, and Aquas tells him that the confirmation is here. He presents her with the life vessel of the Lick Cardos. Aquas is visibly shocked upon seeing the life vessel. She asks if that Barbarian is still in the territory. The Lord confirms he is still residing there. Aquas wonders if it's possible that the Barbarian defeated Cardos. The Lord replies that it is possible. He then drops the final shocking piece of information, that Lord Kane himself was defeated by him, leaving Aquas in a state of complete shock. Aquas deduces that a new powerful figure has appeared and asks about this Barbarian's tribe. Lord Barkin tells her that he claims to be from the White Snowfield, and Aquas is shocked, wondering how something from a demon realm could appear in the outside world. She thinks that this Barbarian might be the reason she came here. She requests to meet the Barbarian personally. Meanwhile, Cattle contemplates the Lick staff, which he believes is a tool to support magic, and decides he will ask mages about it later. Then he realizes it's time for something. The guard captain arrives and informs him that the heretic inquisitor of the sun god has requested to meet him at the church. The captain asks him to show proper respect, and Cattle reassures him. Cattle meets the captain in front of the church, who seems nervous. Then Cattle announces that they will set off. Cattle reflects on the existence of gods in this world and how they sometimes bestow their power directly or descend themselves. He thinks that the church is a gathering place for those who serve the gods. Cattle is impressed by the beauty of the sun god's church. The captain tells him that someone will guide him inside and thanks him. Kettle enters the majestic church and is greeted by 3 priestesses dressed in white. One of them tells him that Lady Aquas has been waiting for him and will escort him to the room. Kettle meets Aquas, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god. He introduces himself as Kettle the Barbarian and expresses his pleasure at meeting her. Aquas notices his smile and wonders about its meaning, while Kettle thinks that she must be very skilled. Cattle asks for the reason he was summoned. Aquas explains that it concerns what happened in the dungeon recently, specifically Cardos, the Lick whom Cattle claims to have defeated. She adds that Cardos committed great evils throughout the world, and that after becoming a Lick, no one could stop him except a hero. Cattle confirms he has heard that, but insists that the Cardos he saw was just a self-destructing Lick. He clarifies that he can only tell her what he saw. Aquas suggests that she allow the sun god she serves to observe their conversation. She explains that if he lies in the presence of the god, a negative reaction will occur, and Kettle understands this to be a divine lie detector. Aquas assumes that Kettle, as a barbarian, will refuse this proposal. But Kettle wonders why he would refuse, considering it a rare opportunity to experience a god's power directly, and he eagerly agrees to start immediately. Aquas is astonished, wondering why he seems so excited. Aquas asks if this proposal bothers Cattle. Cattle inquires about her meaning, and she clarifies that she means the fact that the god will be watching him. Cattle wonders why this would be bothersome, declaring that he has nothing to hide because he hasn't told a single lie. Aquas agrees to proceed and begins to pray. She calls upon her god, who watches from above and observes the sun in all its glory to reveal any lingering falsehoods. A brilliant light floods the area, and Cattle feels an immense presence that transcends human description. He realizes that this presence is curious about him. Aquas is relieved that there is no negative reaction and begins the ritual. She declares that from now on, within this pillar of light, lying is forbidden. Cattle confirms his understanding. Under the direct observation of the sun god, the dialogue between Cattle and Inquisitor Aquas began. Cattle explained the details of the dungeon clearing operation where he faced the Lick, and as he spoke, the radiant divine power emitted no negative reaction, confirming that everything he said was the absolute truth. Inwardly, Aquas concluded that the Lick Cardos must have been in a severely weakened state while preparing for his resurrection ritual, and that Cattle was lucky the sorcerer was not at his full magical strength, otherwise this barbarian would not be standing before her now. After the process ended, Cattle asked her if her doubts had been dispelled, and she confirmed it and apologized for her impertinence, but he replied that it was fine as he too had enjoyed this unique experience. After that, Aquas asked for permission to ask one last personal question, and after he agreed, she nervously and directly asked him in a serious tone if he was truly from the White Snowfield. When Cattle calmly confirmed his identity, Aquas appeared shocked and disbelieving, wondering how someone could truly come from that demon realm, and she connected his existence to the legend of the Ashen Barbarian told by the Emperor long ago. With a sudden sharp gaze, her red eyes gleaming, she was surprised when Kettle expressed a desire to ask her a question in turn. Kettle asked Aquas why she had come to this specific territory, and she replied that she had personal business. But Kettle countered with a piercing look, asking if her mission was primarily to ascertain whether he was an unclean being. Surprise struck Aquas, who tried to deny it, but Kettle clarified that he meant the Eye of God, cleverly pointing out that the god's personal presence to observe their conversation was a momentous event that far exceeded simple lie detection. Under the influence of the god's power that prevents falsehood, Aquas had no choice but to admit the truth of his words. Cattle deduced from this that he had been her target from the beginning, which Aquas denied, explaining that it was only upon arriving in the territory that she thought he might be the person mentioned in a prophecy. But the result of the divine observation proved otherwise. Aquas apologized for hiding her true intentions, which Cattle accepted, finding the matter interesting in its own way. He then took the opportunity to ask her about the content of that prophecy. Aquas hesitated, clutching the sun symbol hanging around her neck, explaining that this was a secret she usually only revealed to those she trusted. But she decided to speak. Aquas began to narrate the details of the prophecy to Cattle, whose face showed signs of astonishment. After some time, Aquas was lost in deep thought, standing by the large church window until the sound of someone's footsteps interrupted the moment, and she turned to see who it was. It was Lord Barkin. He noticed the worry on Aqua's face. She told him that she had met someone, but this meeting had only made her thoughts more tangled. The Lord asked her who that person was. Aquas confirmed with certainty that Kettle was indeed a barbarian from the White Snowfield. The Lord asks in astonishment if this is true, and she replies in the affirmative, adding that if this news were to spread, it would cause turmoil throughout the entire world. The Lord laments that what he had hoped was just a rumor had turned out to be an undeniable truth. The Lord expresses his concern, pointing out that many, chief among them the Emperor, wished to explore the White Snowfield and that the world would descend into chaos if the Emperor decided to act on this news. Aquas reassures him that there is no need to worry about that, explaining that her organization will handle the Lick Cardos themselves, and that they intend to keep the barbarians' existence a secret from the public, which greatly relieves the Lord. He then asks her if all barbarians from the White Snowfield are as strong as Cattle, to which she replies in the negative, reasoning that if they were all like him, they would have already left the Snowfield and conquered the world. The Lord agrees with her, adding that the barbarians scattered across the world, despite their immense physical strength, are characterized by stupidity, which is a natural shortcoming in them. But he wonders with concern about the grave consequences if these physically dominant beings also acquired intelligence. Aquas tells him she heard that Cattle possesses both strength and intelligence, and adds that she also heard the current king of the barbarians is different from his predecessors. Aquas replies that she met him once, and he was indeed different from ordinary barbarians. The Lord comments that a meeting between these two could be interesting, but Aquas strongly rejects the idea. The Lord is surprised by this, and Aquas continues, explaining that the relationship between barbarians and the followers of the gods is not good at all, and that their growing power is not something to be taken lightly. The Lord changes the subject, asking about the content of the prophecy that necessitated a private meeting between her and Cattle. She explains that she needed to confirm something, and when the Lord asks what that was, she replies that she wanted to know if Cattle was purely human or if he was just another being pretending to be human. The Lord is shocked and asks her what exactly the prophecy said. Aqua stands before the large window, preparing to reveal its contents, and when she does, the Lord appears completely stunned, muttering words of disbelief. Later, the Lord summons Cattle again. Cattle tells him that thanks to him, his affairs are going well in the territory, and then asks why he was summoned. The Lord explains that he has something to tell him as the ruler of the territory. Although Cattle shows disinterest, the Lord continues, announcing that he has prepared a reward for Cattle in appreciation for saving the territory. The Lord orders the reward to be brought in, and surprise shows on Cattle's face. when one of the guards places the reward before him. It was a small leather pouch. Lord Barkin explains that this is no ordinary pouch and asks him to inspect it himself. Cattle holds the pouch, guessing at its special nature, and the Lord encourages him to check what's inside, revealing to him that it is an artifact of the bag type. He tells him that he can store many items inside it, as much as its size allows, and that the internal space is roughly equivalent to the size of the reception hall they are sitting in. Cattle is amazed, realizing that this is the first time he has seen a real artifact, a tool made by magic. The Lord adds that he can put whatever items he wants inside, even if they are larger than the pouch's opening itself. Cattle enthusiastically decides to test this immediately using his large axe. As he holds his axe over the small opening, doubting it could possibly fit, the axe is completely pulled into the pouch in a flash, much to his astonishment. The Lord explains that to retrieve any item, he just has to reach his hand inside and imagine that item. Cattle follows the instructions and successfully pulls out his axe again, expressing how amazing it is. The Lord tells him this is his gift for saving the territory and hopes he likes it, to which Cattle enthusiastically replies that he loves it and will definitely make good use of it. The Lord is pleased with Cattle's reaction and considers the matter concluded, but he thinks to himself that the matter of the prophecy still remains, wondering what is happening in his remote territory. He recalls the Swordmaster's words when he told him that things from the demon realms were starting to appear and spread in the world, and that something significant was happening. The Lord connects this to the prophecy. He remembers when Aquas told him its content, that a great evil would descend upon this very territory, and from it would spread throughout the world. It turns out that in the Barkin territory, which is connected by a network of villages, communication with one of these villages was suddenly lost. At first, the matter was not given much attention, but when people from a neighboring village were sent to investigate, they never returned. After that, the Lord sent his official guards, but they too disappeared. Only then did the Lord realize that something dangerous was happening. Later at the Mercenary Guild, Cattle asks Rosa about today's quests, and she informs him of an urgent request from the Lord. Cattle inquires about the nature of the request, and she explains that the mission is to investigate the village that lost contact, and that all he has to do is go there and confirm the situation, noting that the pay is very high for a seemingly simple task. Cattle likes the mission and decides to accept it immediately. Rosa smiles and replies that this is to be expected at the gathering place for the mission's mercenaries. The priestess Hayes is surprised by Cattle's arrival and calls his name in astonishment. Cattle appears wearing his new custom-made clothes, and Hayes immediately notices his different attire. He explains to her that his old clothes from the snowfields had worn out and that he had requested this new design himself. Hayes comments that the design is unique and impressive. She asks him if he has accepted this mission as well, and he confirms it, adding that he couldn't refuse such an interesting job. Hayes thinks to herself how unusual he truly is. He then inquires why she is alone and if her other two companions, Alexandro and Casson, are not participating in the mission. Hayes guesses that they probably refused the mission after seeing the details. Cattle glances at the small crowd around him, noticing that the number of participants is smaller than he expected. He had thought that a simple mission with high pay would attract many people, but their total number didn't even reach 10. Hayes explains to him that the mission is actually a bit dangerous. Although Cattle sees that the request itself seems simple, Hayes explains that the pay is much higher than it should be. She reveals to him that there are rumors that the guard sent to the village never returned, which means the mission is not as simple as it seems. Nevertheless, Cattle insists that the attendance is still too low. Hayes hesitantly tells him that there is another rumor that explains this. She reveals to him that it's related to Lady Aquas. Cattle is surprised to hear the name, and Hayes reveals that the heretic inquisitor of the sun god Lady Aquas will be participating in this mission, adding that very few mercenaries dare to work alongside her. Hayes expresses her personal concern, wondering if Aquas plans to cleave her head off. Cattle reassures her that it won't happen, describing Aquas as a polite and kind woman. Hayes is shocked to learn that Kettle knows Lady Aquas, and he confirms that he knows her, even describing her as his friend. Hayes stands speechless, unable to comprehend the idea of a heretic inquisitor and a barbarian being friends. At that moment, Kettle approaches Aquas, who has arrived at the location, and greets her, saying it's good to see her again. Aquas coldly replies that she never recalls them becoming friends. Cattle laughs and brushes it off, cheerfully suggesting they become friends from now on. Aquas ignores his suggestion and changes the subject, turning to Hayes, who is standing next to Cattle and asking if his companion is also a follower of another god. Cattle is surprised that Aquas knows Hayes. Aquas inquires why Hayes is here, explaining that as far as she knows, the followers of Lady Kaluja are currently in a period of rest. Aquas thinks that only high-ranking members are supposed to be active at this time, but she quickly retracts her suspicion, telling Hayes that she must be mistaken, as she doesn't know every detail of every religious organization. At that moment, the guard captain arrives with his soldiers at the gathering place. Cattle immediately recognizes him and greets him cheerfully, nodding that they meet again. Aqua stands calmly beside Cattle, while Hayes looks at them with worry and tension, attention. The guard captain formally welcomes all the participants who accepted the request, and after confirming everyone's presence, he announces that it is time to set off. Cattle comments with a hint of sarcasm that their majestic gathering makes him feel as if they are a military squad on their way to launch a real raid on a fortified castle. In all seriousness, he asks Aquas if her swift action now means that this is the fateful time spoken of in the ancient prophecy. She replies with cautious calm that she cannot say for sure as the god has not revealed the exact timing of such a momentous event. All that has happened is that they have lost contact with the village completely and suddenly. Cattle deduces from her words that despite the uncertainty, there is still a possibility that this is the intended dangerous event. The words of the mysterious prophecy that an unparalleled great evil would descend upon the earth dance in his mind, and he smiles with clear enthusiasm as the idea of confronting the great evil seems to spark his interest and curiosity immensely. After a period of cautious walking, the team finally reaches the entrance of the lost village, which is enveloped in a suspicious silence. The guard captain asks Aquas about her spiritual feeling towards the place, and she replies with concern that she cannot sense any living presence at all, as if the village is devoid of souls. The captain guesses that the inhabitants might have simply fled in fear of something, and he issues orders for his men to disperse and search thoroughly for any clues that might reveal the secret of this disappearance. The mercenaries, Kettle and Hayes, agree without hesitation and begin to spread out among the silent alleys of village. The captain thinks that the village is very small, accommodating no more than 100 people, and that it's logically impossible for everyone to disappear suddenly without leaving any trace behind. He is fully confident that they will find some clue, no matter how small, and orders the comprehensive search to begin immediately. While searching a wooden building, one of the mercenaries is greatly surprised by what he finds inside. He calls out to the captain loudly, indicating that he has found ready-to-eat food. The captain initially thinks the inhabitants left it behind in a hurry while fleeing, but the mercenary clarifies that the food is still warm, as if it had been prepared just moments ago. The captain is shocked by this strange information, wondering in confusion how such an illogical thing could happen, as contact with the village had been lost for at least several days. Amidst his confusion, another report comes in stating that no footprints or signs of the inhabitants leaving the village or even hiding anywhere nearby have been found. The captain orders the search to continue in the hope of finding any thread that will lead them to the truth. The results of the ongoing search reveal a perplexing and disturbing scene throughout the village. There are clear signs of daily life continuing normally, but there is no human presence whatsoever. The mercenaries confirm that all evidence suggests people were just here living their lives, but there is no physical or spiritual trace of them. The captain asks Aquas if she has any explanation for this mystery, but she admits her inability and that she also does not know what is going on. He then turns to Cattle, who in turn confirms that he has found no significant clues and that he feels no strange presence in the air. The captain expresses his extreme frustration and anger at this mysterious situation that defies all imagination. Cattle calmly and confidently suggests that they ask someone who might know the answer they are looking for. The captain is puzzled by his words, so Cattle explains that there is another person present with them in this deserted village. Everyone is surprised and looks around nervously, and the captain spots a strange-looking woman who was not among them before, wondering in horror how long she has been standing there among them in silence. The mysterious woman smiles, expressing her surprise that Kettle managed to notice her presence, even though she had hidden herself very skillfully. Kettle simply replies that it's natural for them to notice a stranger suddenly appearing in a place like this, but the woman tells him that people usually don't realize she's there until she wants them to. The mysterious woman scoffs at the tense group, sarcastically nodding that even the powerful inquisitor of the sun god was unable to detect her hidden presence. She looks at Cattle and thinks that he doesn't seem to have awakened any of the deep mystical secrets. Cattle boldly asks her about her true identity, but she completely ignores his question and considers him merely an unexpected gain in her plans. The guard captain feels the imminent danger emanating from her and shouts at everyone to retreat immediately and get away from her. The captain realizes with shock and horror that Aquas, despite being the most powerful inquisitor among them, also cannot sense this woman's presence at all, as if she were a ghost. In a moment of terror, the captain reaches two possible conclusions with no third option. Either this woman is not an evil or demonic being at all, or she represents an evil of a very high and powerful level that her presence cannot be detected by conventional means. With a sinister smile that chills the blood in their veins, she announces that she has made her decision about their fate. Describing Cattle as an interesting barbarian, she vows in a decisive tone that she will take him with her to hell to be her slave forever. The woman transforms to reveal her terrifying true demonic form and unleashes a massive ball of destructive purple energy. She flies before them in the air, defying gravity, while Cattle, Hayes, and Aquas watch the scene in complete shock and helplessness before this overwhelming power they have never witnessed before. The guard captain screams for everyone to run for their lives, but the mercenaries discover they are trapped inside a transparent magical barrier that suddenly appeared, and they desperately try to break it with force. The demoness announces in a voice that echoes throughout the village that the entire place is now under her absolute control, and no one can escape her grasp, adding as she licks her lips greedily that they have all become her prey. Everyone realizes they are facing a real and powerful demon, and a terrified Hayes confirms that this entity is a named demon, one of the most dangerous types of demons. She begins to pray fervently to her god for salvation and deliverance from this nightmare. Cattle places his hand on her head to reassure her, telling her in a calm voice to calm down, that he is by her side and will not leave her. Cattle asks her what it means for a demon to have a name and what distinguishes it from others. Hayes explains with a trembling voice that most entities called demons are just weak fragments of evil and magic and are not truly powerful. But she clarifies that there are true and original demons, beings born in the depths of darkness who choose their own names, and that the weakest named demon possesses enough power to destabilize an entire kingdom and plunge it into chaos. Cattle understands that this demon before them is one of those formidable powers not to be underestimated, and Hayes confirms this, recognizing her by her distinctive horns as Ashtir, a legendary demoness who appeared hundreds of years ago and caused immense destruction. Cattle asks if they can break the magical barrier by force, but Hayes answers in the negative and with despair, explaining that the place has already become the demon's domain and the only way out is to defeat it, which is nearly impossible. Cattle finds this strangely interesting and is surprised when the barrier begins to crack and crumble as soon as he touches it with his hand. He then suddenly laughs, cleverly hiding the hole he made, and declares that he might enjoy watching the situation for a little longer. Hayes looks at him, completely bewildered by his calm reaction, and he gives her a reassuring gesture with his hand, telling her not to worry. The demoness Ashtir mocks Aquas, asking sarcastically if the trick she prepared for them wasn't fun and exciting to investigate. She reveals that the signs of life they found in the disappeared village, where it seemed as if people were just there, were nothing but an illusion and an elaborate demonic trick aimed at manipulating humans and luring them into her trap. Aquas looks at her with intense disgust, describing her game as vile and despicable. Aquas thinks that summoning a named demon into the physical world requires a massive sacrifice of souls, and that the inhabitants of an entire village are barely enough as an offering for such a powerful entity. Also, turning an entire territory into a demonic domain without anyone noticing is beyond impossible. Aquas wonders in confusion how this demoness managed to descend into this world and infiltrate it without being detected by the forces of good, to which Ashtir sarcastically replies that she will not, of course, tell her secret. Aquas screams at her in anger, describing her as a vile evil that has come to defile this holy land. Ashtir laughs loudly and insults Aquas by calling her the obedient dog of the gods, and asks sarcastically if her powerful god can save her from this predicament. She then tells her seriously to listen carefully to what she is about to say, explaining that deep cracks have begun to form in the fabric of this world, and that it no longer belongs to humans and gods alone as they believe. It is narrated that a very long time ago, gods and humans engaged in a fierce war with the forces of evil, and the conflict ended in their crushing victory, with the defeated evil being banished from the world to deep dimensions. Ashtir proudly declares that she is the demoness of gravity, and that she has been eagerly awaiting this day in hell, vowing to wash away the shame of past defeat and cover the entire world with evil and darkness. Aquas angrily replies that this world will remain the property of gods and humans only, and orders the disgusting creature to return immediately from whence it came. Aquas begins a sacred ritual, calling upon her god to descend upon her with his power. A massive pillar of brilliant golden light engulfs her, and she begins to transform into a divine warrior form. While Cattle thinks to himself, just as he expected, that enemies in these stories never attack during transformation scenes, Aquas finally appears clad in full golden divine armor that radiates power and light. Ashtir finds this transformation interesting and amusing, and summons a huge, elegant crystal scythe, declaring her readiness to fight. Aquas calls the demoness arrogant and overconfident and charges towards her at super speed to attack. The two clash in a violent and powerful collision, causing a massive explosion of energy that shakes the ground beneath them. And as a result, Ashtir and Aquas are thrown back with force. Ashtir stands confidently, saying that the battle should be fought with dignity and respect, and asks sarcastically if the divine hunting dogs do not know the rules of combat. Aquas glares at her with intense anger and asks if she is done with her nonsense and ready to die. The fierce battle continues between the holy warrior Aquas and the demoness Ashtir, as Aquas rushes forward at great speed, leaving a trail of scattered dust behind her, her eyes flashing with holy fire. But in an unexpected moment, Ashtir suddenly disappears in the blink of an eye, as if she was never there to begin with. Before Aquas can comprehend what happened, the demoness appears directly behind her, delivering a treacherous blow from the rear, accompanied by the sound of the air tearing. Aquas blocks the blow at the last second with an amazing reaction, but Ashtir succeeds in grabbing her divine shield with her sharp claw, which surprises and shocks the warrior, as no being had ever touched her shield in this way before. The demoness seizes this precious opportunity and delivers a crushing blow with all her might, sending Aquas hurtling towards the ground with tremendous force, creating a large crater where she lands. Ashtir continues her attack relentlessly and without mercy, realizing she has found a weak point in her opponent's defense, unleashing a continuous volley of dark blows that Aquas struggles to block with great difficulty, while retreating step by step. In the midst of this violent battle, Aquas begins to recite a verse from her holy scriptures in a booming voice that echoes across the battlefield, declaring with a voice full of faith that the brilliant light will not be violated by any creature of darkness. As soon as her words end, a massive beam of pure holy light descends from the sky, striking Ashtir directly and forcing her to retreat as she screams in pain. The demoness stands at a distance and looks at her opponent, astonished by Aqua's ability to read the holy scriptures with such power at such a young age. She then praises her with clear sarcasm, saying she is more interesting than she expected. Aquas does not stop there but continues to recite another more powerful verse, calling on her lord to burn all that is evil with his holy fires. She raises her scepter, which begins to glow with a brilliant light, then launches forward at a speed faster than sound, and unleashes another blast of destructive divine energy that takes the form of a holy fire explosion. The battle between the two ignites and its pace escalates wildly, as the exchange blows at a super speed that the naked eye cannot follow, leading to violent and successive explosions of holy and demonic energy, which destroy the quiet village around them, turning it into burning rubble. The mercenaries and Hayes find themselves in the midst of this devastating conflict, screaming in terror for help, trying to escape the falling debris. Meanwhile, as the two continue their raging battle that shakes the earth, Cattle stands aside with his hands in his pockets, watching the magnificent battle with great admiration and a smile on his face, commenting on how exciting it is as if it were an entertainment show. Hayes runs to him in desperation and clings to his arm tightly, begging him with tears in her eyes to help Lady Aquas, who is fighting for them. Cattle replies calmly and coldly that he might be able to help, but he wonders why he should interfere, leaving Hayes speechless and shocked by his response. He explains that he doesn't want to spoil such a good and enjoyable fight, as it's rare to see a battle of this level. And although he also wants to fight a demon, for now, he prefers to enjoy watching this exciting fight until the end. Hayes is horrified by his selfish attitude and thinks that this man is not normal and that there is something wrong with his way of thinking. The fierce battle continues between the two opposing forces, as sparks of energy fly everywhere. Ashtir admits to herself that Aquas is a stubborn and strong opponent as expected from the dogs of the gods, but she feels she surpasses her in terms of raw power and combat experience. However, she realizes that the confrontation itself is not in her favor in the long run, as in this world, demonic beings cannot directly challenge the gods for a long time, and she finds herself slowly retreating before the pure divine power of Aquas, which grows stronger with every moment. Ashtir realizes that if the battle continues like this, it will drag on for a long time and might eventually turn against her. She decides that she will resort to a more cunning method that will guarantee her a swift victory. She begins to move at super speed with a wicked and sly smile on her face, then suddenly changes direction and heads towards the defenseless mercenaries who are watching the fight in fear, which shocks Aquas as she realizes the demoness' new target, so she moves quickly and protects them with her body and her shield. Ashtir continues to unleash an attack of dark energy to pressure Aqua's shield and weaken it, while extreme terror appears on the faces of the frightened mercenaries for what might happen to them if the shield breaks. Aquas becomes furious at this treacherous and cowardly attack and calls Ashtir a filthy thing that has no honor. Ashtir laughs with sarcasm and contempt, asking if Aquas really expected a demon like her to fight with the fairness and honor of knights. At the peak of her anger, Aquas begins to recite a verse from her most sacred scriptures, a verse she only uses in extreme situations, announcing the birth of the glittering golden essence that represents the highest degree of holy power. A powerful and radiant golden aura explodes around her, and with it, she creates a holy sanctuary of light in the shape of a dome, then orders everyone to enter it quickly. The surviving mercenaries rush inside the protective barrier, thanking Aquas for saving their lives from certain death. Ashtir laughs wickedly, questioning if it's right to consume such precious and rare holy scriptures to protect some weak humans. Aquas angrily orders her to be silent, and the demoness smiles, commenting that this is the response befitting an angry holy warrior. The two rush towards each other in preparation for the continuation of the decisive confrontation, and Aquas manages to block the fierce attack launched by Ashtir. As she is surprised when she sees her skillfully dodge and jump into the air above her in an acrobatic move, suddenly she closes the distance between them and approaches, whispering in her ear that death is just death and no one will acknowledge Aqua's noble sacrifice for these scums. She warns her that if she continues like this, she will fall and disgrace the name of her god whom she serves. Then, with extreme cunning, she offers her a simple and tempting choice: to remove the holy power protecting the mercenaries so she can use her full strength to protect herself, and if she manages to defeat her after that, Her honor and the power of her god will be exalted in the heavens. Ashtar asks with biting sarcasm if Aquas will really die for a handful of mortal humans. Aquas realizes these are just cheap psychological tricks and describes her words as pointless and that they will not affect her. When Ashtar sees that her provocation has failed, she smiles viciously and tells her to die a martyr then since she has chosen it. She then unleashes a concentrated and devastating attack of dark energy, raising her power to its absolute maximum, while Aquas struggles with all her might to block this overwhelming attack with her holy light, which has begun to gradually fade. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, Ashtar appears before her with astonishing speed as if she were a ghost, and unleashes a violent explosion of dark energy from close range, which throws Aquas backward after she barely managed to dodge it at the last moment. Although she manages to quickly regain her balance, shock and fear are clearly visible on her face. Ashtar continues her attack at great speed without giving her any chance to catch her breath, launching rings of purple energy that surround Aquas from all sides and completely trap her like snakes. Aquas finds herself surrounded by pitch-black darkness, unable to see anything, while the demoness attacks her from above like a hawk swooping down on its prey. Ashtar declares that she is tired of hearing the holy scriptures of the gods and launches a devastating attack with all her might. Under the weight of the violent attack, Aquas coughs up blood and is thrown to the ground with extreme force. At the last moment, she grabs her shield and blocks a fatal stab that was about to pierce her heart. Nevertheless, Ashtar continues to attack her brutally while she is helpless and on the ground. The demoness gathers a massive amount of dark energy in her hand in the form of a black sphere and crushes Aquas with it after launching it directly at her, creating a violent explosion that shatters the golden barrier that was protecting the mercenaries. One of the mercenaries screams in despair, realizing they will all die now that their protection is gone. Ashtar smiles viciously, announcing that she will eat them for dessert after her main course. But she decides to start with Aquas first, and wonders about the taste of the noble dog of the gods as she opens her mouth full of sharp and terrifying fangs. At the moment Ashtar was about to pounce, Cattle's hand suddenly appears and stops her jaw with force before it can close on Aquas, and he calmly and coldly orders her to stop, declaring that this is enough playing around. Both Aquas and Ashtar are completely stunned by his sudden and unexpected appearance. The demoness wonders to herself when he got here and how, as she did not feel his presence at all, as if he had appeared out of nowhere. Without uttering another word, Cattle delivers a powerful and direct punch to Ashtar's face, sending her flying across the village in a violent shockwave that destroyed several buildings in its path. He then calmly turns to Aquas, who is still in a state of shock on the ground, and asks her if she is okay. Aquas looks at him in amazement and remembers at that moment that this is the mysterious man who defeated Swordmaster Cain with complete ease. From a distance, Ashtar rises from the rubble, her eyes burning with anger and fire, and screams at Cattle, calling him an arrogant barbarian, and asks how he dares to interrupt her delicious meal. Cattle simply replies as he dusts off his clothes, declaring that Aquas is his friend, and for that simple reason he will not let her die. Ashtar gets even angrier at his cold response, and tells him that she was planning to keep him alive to be her new toy after she finishes eating the rest, but he replies with amusement and a provocative smile that he has no intention of being anyone's toy. The demoness replies with a wicked smile, saying that he will die here and now then, and she summons her weapon, which takes the form of a massive demonic scythe. Aquas tries to get up with difficulty and asks him to retreat and flee immediately. He tells her that despite his ordinary appearance, he is strong enough to handle her, but she warns him with concern that he cannot defeat a demon with just physical strength. She insists that she is strong enough to fight despite her poor condition, trying to get to her feet. Aquas explains that only divine power is capable of banishing demons from this world and purifying them. She adds that this is a cosmic law that has existed since the dawn of time, and since they are now in the demon's domain, there is no hope for a miracle to save them. Cattle contemplates her words seriously for a moment, then notices her weak condition and grave injuries, and tells her that she does not look fit to fight at all right now. Aquas replies with determination and resolve that she must fight because she serves the god, and it is her duty to face evil head-on until her last breath. Cattle expresses his admiration for her determination and strong faith, but he kindly asks her to leave this fight to him and rest, which puzzles and surprises her. He then smiles broadly and explains that he has always wanted to fight a demon himself to see how strong he is. Ashtar tells him that he doesn't really understand and mocks him, saying that he can't even touch her with his pathetic human strength. Cattle challenges her to test the truth of her words. The demoness licks her claws with relish, expressing her desire to see his beautiful eyes twist in pain as she tears him to pieces. She then launches her first attack with all her speed and power, creating a massive vortex of dark energy around her. She then launches from the vortex at lightning speed to attack Cattle, which shocks Aquas and makes her fear for his fate. But with complete composure and calm, Cattle delivers a powerful and direct punch to her face in the middle of her attack, sending her flying into the air after her head was completely crushed by the force of the blow, leaving Aquas in a state of utter shock and disbelief at what her eyes had seen. Aquas stood frozen in place, her eyes wide in absolute shock, hardly believing the scene she had just witnessed. With his bare fist alone, Cattle had shattered the head of a powerful demoness, as if it were a rotten fruit, and she began to wonder to herself in a faint voice filled with terror whether such a supernatural act was even possible for a human. Meanwhile, from the heart of the horrifying scene, Ashtyr's form began to regenerate and reform from a violent vortex of pure dark energy. Cattle noted this with a cold smile, remarking that her head grows back even after being completely crushed. The demoness looked at him with eyes glowing with hatred and astonishment, and asked him in a hoarse voice about his true identity, as it was impossible for him to be a mere human. He calmly and simply replied that he was just an ordinary barbarian, a response Ashtyr rejected with absolute anger and disdain, considering it an insult to her intelligence. She was overcome with intense confusion. Her demonic senses were completely unable to detect any trace of what is called mysticism emanating from Cattle's being, and she concluded with certainty that he was not using aura or any form of magic to enhance his power. Based on this astonishing conclusion, she decided she would have to test and confirm the truth of this incomprehensible physical strength for herself. A wicked smile appeared on her lips as she pounced on Cattle with lightning speed, letting out a commanding scream for him to die now, adding with arrogance that his weak human form made fighting him somewhat embarrassing. But there was no choice but to end this absurdity. However, in a breathtaking moment, her smile froze and turned to utter shock when Cattle caught her advancing wrist with indescribable ease, as if stopping an angry child. Before she could process what had happened, he delivered a crushing punch directly to her chest, a punch that launched like a cannonball and sent her flying backward through the air as she coughed up dark blood, the pain piercing her demonic body for the first time. She was sent flying through the air at tremendous speed as if she were a tiny insect struck by a hurricane. Then she slammed into the ground with a thunderous impact, creating a small crater from the force of the collision, trembling and in disbelief that a simple physical punch could carry such destructive power. Cattle calmly noted that she had begun to regenerate again, while the demoness at that moment realized a terrifying truth. His punch was not enhanced by aura or magic at all, but was an expression of pure and terrifying physical strength. Cattle wondered with genuine curiosity, examining her, about the principle or mechanism that allowed her to regenerate with such speed and efficiency. Without waiting for an answer, he continued his brutal assault, stomping on the ground with such immense force that it created a violent shockwave that cracked the rocks around him. In an unseen blink of an eye, he launched towards her with insane speed, and before she could even lift her regenerating head, he grabbed it with both hands and smashed it into the ground with extreme violence, then followed up his attack with a fierce sidekick that sent her body flying away once again. The tattered and scattered remains of her body gathered on the ground, and dark energy flowed to rebuild and regenerate it once more, piece by piece, while Cattle watched the scene with a slight smile and eyes gleaming with interest. He noted that every time her head was destroyed, it reappeared entirely from nothing, and concluded that this was an ability befitting a demon, then wondered aloud if the head was her nucleus or life source. Ashtyr found the entire situation absurd and humiliating, and wondered with suppressed anger as she got to her feet if he really thought he could face and overcome her with brute force alone. She then added with biting sarcasm, questioning if this meant she didn't even need to resist his primitive strength at all. As Cattle looked at her in confusion, not understanding her intent, the demoness warned him in a tone that suddenly changed and dripped with danger, telling him to listen well. And she once again declared her identity with pride, "I am Ashtyr, the demoness of gravity," and challenged him to continue facing her with only his brute force to see his fate. Cattle replied with perfect calm, and with simple words that completely shattered her pride, saying that she really didn't seem that impressive to him. These words were a fatal blow to her demonic pride, and she erupted in a massive scream of rage that shook the atmosphere as she prepared to unleash her true attack. Ashtyr charged towards Cattle in a rush filled with anger and humiliation, her eyes shooting sparks. As she approached, she began to distort the space before her, as dark gravitational energy gathered to form a massive and savage warhammer, black as coal and radiating a visible weight. The demoness swung her heavy weapon and struck Cattle with a force capable of crushing a giant boulder, but he simply blocked the horrific blow with his bare hands, and then without hesitation, shattered the hammer formed of solid gravity with a single direct punch, following it with another swift punch to her face that sent Ashtyr flying backward once again as her head shattered for the third time. Ashtyr stood again as her body rapidly regenerated, her mind sinking into a state of absolute disbelief. She thought about the nature of her power as the demoness of gravity, and how she could concentrate the weight of an entire castle wall into a single blow from her hammer. It was impossible and contrary to all logic that an ordinary barbarian who hadn't even awakened mysticism in his body could block such an attack with his bare hands and even shatter her weapon with such ease. So she screamed at the top of her lungs that this was utterly impossible. With blinding rage, Ashtyr gathered an immense amount of dark energy between her hands and unleashed it in a devastating beam, screaming at the barbarian to die this time. Cattle did not retreat, but met the attack head-on with a direct punch that pierced the beam, creating a massive explosion of white light from the punch's energy and the demoness's dark energy. Cattle's overwhelming power completely annihilated the demoness's energy and collided with it, creating a huge explosion, leaving Aquas wondering in shock and terror what exactly her eyes were witnessing. Aquas remembered what she had read in the ancient texts, that Ashtir was an incredibly powerful demoness who had managed to topple an entire kingdom on her own hundreds of years ago. She was completely stunned that a demoness of this legendary level of power was being overcome and dealt with in such an overwhelming fashion, with just the use of bare fists. Cattle landed gently on Ashtir's body, which had already begun to regenerate again, and noted that she seemed truly unkillable, concluding that pure physical force, no matter how great, would not be enough to kill her permanently. The demoness smiled a wicked, cunning smile as she heard his conclusion. Suddenly, Ashtir felt an immense and crushing pressure she had never felt before in her long life, a pressure emanating from Cattle as he stood over her. She asked him again in a trembling voice, begging to know his true identity, but he calmly repeated his claim that he was just an ordinary barbarian. Ashtir refused to believe this ridiculous lie, but at the same time she found this situation, this terror she was feeling, strangely satisfying and exciting. She told him there was one last thing she wanted to test, and then her entire body transformed into liquid dark energy to escape from under his foot. Cattle watched the situation with interest while Aquas felt anxiety rising in her heart. In the sky, that energy gathered to form a great black sphere of dark energy, which began to shatter the surrounding rocks and pull them towards it with immense gravitational force. Ashtir addressed the barbarian from on high, declaring that she would tear him to pieces with all her might, and she gathered her full energy in preparation for launching her final devastating attack. Cattle realized in that moment that this was the demoness' true power, and that the situation had become dire indeed. Aquas also realized that brute force alone would not be enough to face this, and that there was a desperate need for divine power to intervene. Ashtir smiled a smile of victory and recited her final incantation, ordering the thorns to fall and kill. Immediately, an endless volley of sharp, dark thorns began to rain down from the sky like black rain. Cattle stood in place without moving, then began to wave his arms with fantastical speed, creating a whirlwind of swift blows that formed an impenetrable shield around him, shattering every thorn that approached and protecting himself completely from the attack. Ashtir wondered aloud in a state of complete shock what kind of ferocious beast this Cattle was. She was then surprised again when he launched from his spot towards her in the sky at a speed exceeding the speed of sound. In that moment, Aquas seized the opportunity and intervened, reciting in a loud, confident voice another verse from her holy scriptures, declaring that the glorious light had come to devour all that is evil. She focused all her remaining divine power in her prayer, causing a pure and luminous celestial energy to manifest, which formed in the air into a magnificent golden axe pulsing with holy light and descended directly into the hand of Cattle, who looked at it in awe for a moment, wondering if it was a direct gift from the god. Aquas screamed towards him, panting from exhaustion, that she had gathered all her remaining divinity for him and ordered him to finish the demoness now and without hesitation. Cattle gripped his new axe, charged with divine power, feeling a strange resonance with it, and then told the demoness that the fun time was over. He delivered a crushing vertical blow, and the axe's holy energy easily pierced her demonic body. In that moment, Ashtir knew with absolute certainty that she had been defeated. The divine light began to consume her body from the inside and out as she screamed in real and painful agony, and then she fell to the ground like a lifeless corpse, completely defeated. Cattle approached her calmly and commented that the fight had been somewhat amusing. Ashtir declared with her last dying breaths in a faint voice that it was a shame to be reverse summoned to hell in such a humiliating way. But it wasn't a complete loss, as she had confirmed for herself the existence of a being like Cattle in this world. She asked him for his last name, and he simply replied Cattle. The moment Aquas heard this name, she screamed in utter fear and terror. Ashtir burst into a crazed and broken laugh, and with the last of her strength, she opened an ethereal communication channel that shook the foundations of reality and broadcast a thunderous message to all the inhabitants of hell in their abyssal dimensions, ordering them to carve the name, Cattle the Barbarian, into the core of their collective memory so they would never forget it. Aquas let out a desperate cry, while the demoness ordered her followers to devour her memories after her death and learn everything about this being called Cattle. Ashtir laughed her final laugh, declaring that this barbarian now belonged to all of them, as strange and invisible beings began to forcibly enter his consciousness. Cattle stood in confusion for a moment, wondering what exactly was happening. In the inner space of his consciousness, the majestic demonic entities appeared as giant cosmic worms before his manifested inner consciousness. With utter simplicity, his consciousness crushed them with ease as if they were nothing. In reality, Cattle looked at his physical body and then dismissed the whole affair with a blank and indifferent expression. He asked the dying demoness what she had done, nodding that he felt something strange enter his body for a moment. Ashtir was met with a final shock, wondering in terror how the demonic darkness that was supposed to overwhelm his body and soul had no effect on him at all. Without another word, Cattle crushed the last remains of the demoness on the ground with his foot and destroyed her completely, while Aquas and Hayes screamed in a state of absolute shock. After the purple mist from the demoness's death dissipated, Cattle stretched with a satisfied smile and asked Aquas if the mission was now successfully completed. In the quiet territory of Barkin in the kingdom of Jehentra, breaking news spread like wildfire. carrying with it alarming reports about the afflicted village with which all contact had been lost. Newspapers were soon filled with drawings and speculations about the demoness Ashtir, who was identified as responsible for the horrific attack on the village. The territory's ruler sits in his office, his face etched with sorrow, wondering in a weary voice how such a terrible ordeal could strike his small territory that he had strived so hard to protect. After the difficult battle against the Lick, a new threat now emerges, a named demon mentioned in the oldest historical texts. Amidst this disaster, the only good news was that the brave inquisitor of the sun god had managed to temporarily fend off the demoness, giving him a moment to catch his breath and think carefully about the next steps to be taken. The scene shifts to Cattle, who could clearly feel that the entire territory was in a state of turmoil and anticipation due to these earth-shattering events. He directs his gaze towards Aquas, who was lying asleep while her body slowly recovered from its deep wounds, and is surprised when he sees her begin to stir and speak in a faint voice. Aquas rises from the bed with a deliberate movement, and Cattle asks her with sincere concern if she is really leaving so soon, suggesting she give her body some extra rest before setting off on her journey. Aquas stands firm and explains to him that she cannot delay any longer, as she must inform the Holy Land of the details of what happened here as soon as possible. Cattle understands and respects her decisive resolution. Aquas turns to him and thanks him deeply for saving her life, admitting honestly that without him, she would have become a helpless plaything in the hands of that evil demoness. Cattle shakes his head, gently refusing her thanks, saying in a simple tone that he only did what anyone would do to save a friend. He then asks her with curiosity if they are considered friends now. Aquas is surprised by this unfamiliar idea. How could a barbarian from the north and a loyal servant of the god be friends? She reminds him of her identity, saying she is the inquisitor of the sun god, and asks him seriously if he still wishes for them to be friends despite this great difference between them. Cattle simply asks her if there is any reason why not. After a moment of thought, Aquas admits there is no real reason. So Cattle concludes that it doesn't matter then, their friendship is possible. Aquas agrees with a slight smile. Cattle tells her he has a question he would like to ask, and asks her about the validity of the information that one should not tell a demon their real name. Confirms this is true, explaining that the reason lies in a concept known as marking. She explains to him that demons use names to engrave a dark and invisible mark on a person's soul, and this mark acts as a beacon that attracts other evil entities, making the marked person an easy and constantly hunted prey. She adds that in ancient times the marked had to undergo complex baptismal rituals to be rid of this mark, or they would end up hunted and killed by the merciless forces of evil. Cattle asks her with clear concern if this means he has also been marked after his encounter with the demoness. Aquas immediately reassures him that he was fortunately not marked, but she warns him that his name has likely now been revealed to the beings of hell and has become known to them. However, she tells him not to worry too much, as without the mark, they cannot accurately track his location, and there won't be a real problem unless he meets them face to face again. Cattle expresses his interest in the fact that despite his strength, he could not kill the demoness with physical force alone. Aquas explains that this is the mysterious nature of demons, different from any other being. She then begins to tell an old story, explaining that the great gods in the beginning are the ones who created humans and gave them life, but beings from beyond showed a malevolent interest in the human world. These beings crossed dimensions and broke into their world and began to slaughter humans with unspeakable brutality, which eventually prompted the gods to descend to the human world, stand by their creation, and name those beings demons, before banishing them and sealing the gate behind them. Aquas continues her detailed explanation, stating that after the gods saved humanity from annihilation, humans built churches and temples to honor them and lived in peace, achieving remarkable progress in civilization with direct divine assistance. But as time passed, for some mysterious and unknown reason, demons began to slowly and cautiously interfere in the human world again. And because demons are spiritual beings that can only be defeated by holy divine power, the gods chose loyal and pious followers and granted them a portion of their power to face this renewed threat. Cattle deduces from her words that demons cannot be killed by pure physical force because they belong to another dimension, which Aquas confirms, adding that they were not originally part of this world's fabric. Cattle comments with concern that the frequent appearance of such powerful beings would be a major and difficult problem for everyone. Aquas reassures him that high-ranking named demons cannot appear in their world that easily. However, she reveals to him that the cycles of dungeon appearances have recently become abnormal and erratic, and it seems the sealed demon world has begun to affect their world in some way, as many evil entities have started to appear slowly and gradually. She specifies that these strange phenomena began exactly 1 year ago. This phrase triggers Cattle's memory, as he immediately recalls that it coincides perfectly with the time he undertook his final quest in the vast snowfield. After their long talk, Aquas thanks Cattle again for everything and tells him she must leave now, inviting him to visit her religious order one day where he would be very welcome. Cattle smiles and says he would certainly like to do that. Later, as she sits in her carriage which has begun its journey, Aquas thinks that although her body has not fully recovered yet, she cannot delay reporting what happened to the great saintess. She then remembers Cattle and wonders in confusion why the sun god gave no prophecy or sign regarding this mysterious and powerful barbarian. Elsewhere entirely, Swordmaster Cain walks through a lavish and ornate corridor, sighing from the extreme exhaustion he feels after his lengthy meeting with the Emperor. Suddenly, a mysterious man with long black hair emerges from the shadows and comments that Cain seems to be having a very difficult time. Cain immediately recognizes the newcomer as the great master of the Magic Tower, the place where all the powerful mages and mystics of the world gather. The master of the Magic Tower asks him why he is at the palace, and Cain replies that he is here to give a detailed report on the results of his recent mission. The Tower Master shrewdly and accurately guesses that it was a reconnaissance mission to the demon world, specifically to a region known as the Forest of Silence. When he asks for his impression of it, Cain replies with a grim expression that it was a horrific place that defied everything they know about the laws of the natural world. Cain explains that, just as the name suggests, nothing could be heard at all in that forest. Even mystic detection abilities did not work properly, and when he tried to shout, not the slightest sound vibration came from his throat. He recalls with horror how his soldiers disappeared one by one in that terrifying and absolute silence, describing it as a truly loathsome and abominable place. Cain wonders aloud why the Emperor is so insistent on trying to conquer this dangerous demon world. The Tower Master coldly comments that he agrees the demon world is a fascinating place, and that he himself is very interested in its secrets. Cain hopes in his heart not to be dragged into this complicated affair, preferring to stay as far away as possible. Suddenly and without warning, the Tower Master raises his hand, and a complex spatial magic circle glows beneath their feet. In an instant, they are pulled through dimensions and transported to a vast and stunning starry space. Cain is greatly surprised and asks the reason for this sudden action. The Tower Master tells him with a mysterious smile that during his mission, he met someone very special, which shocks Cain and makes him freeze in place. He realizes with anger that the Tower Master had placed a Watcher's Eye spell on him to spy on him. The Tower Master confirms he did so during their last meeting, describing it as one of his few and enjoyable hobbies, which prompts Cain to curse him under his breath. Cain then calms down and tells him that since he has already seen everything, what more does he want to know from him? The Master of the Magic Tower asks Cain for his opinion on the barbarian from the White Snowfield, nodding that he is a legendary figure he thought existed only in old tales. The Tower Master adds that this barbarian is strong enough to defeat a seasoned swordmaster, meaning Cain himself, and crush the powerful Liccardos as if he were a mere insect, plus the fact of his appearance from the edge of the White Snowfield. All this makes it highly likely. Cain is greatly surprised to learn that Cattle was the one who defeated Cardos. The Tower Master explains that although the news has not spread publicly yet, rumors are circulating strongly within the Magic Tower that Cardos, the great sorcerer who once shook the continent, has failed in his attempt at resurrection. The Tower Master adds that he went himself to pay his respects at his lair, feeling saddened by the loss of one of his few friends from the Lick lineage. Cain is surprised that a being like the Tower Master can feel sadness. The Master explains that friends become necessary for someone who has lived as long as he has, then casually mentions that no valuable artifacts were found in the Lick's lair after his death. Cain questions this, as he thought all artifacts had been recovered when Cardos was defeated, but the Master clarifies that the most precious and important artifact has not yet been recovered. Tower Master asks Cain again if he truly believes that the barbarian defeated Cardos on his own. Cain honestly replies that he thinks it's entirely possible, especially if it concerns that specific barbarian he met. The Tower Master cleverly notes that Cain has not yet informed the Emperor of Cattle's existence. Cain wonders why he should, explaining that the Mad Emperor is already throwing valuable and important individuals into the furnace of the demon world as if they were worthless trash. He adds that if the Emperor knew of the barbarian's existence, a violent clash between them would be inevitable. Cain predicts a catastrophic conflict between a barbarian who acts on his free whims and an obsessed emperor who wants to control everything in the world, a conflict that would surely drag the entire kingdom into the abyss. The Tower Master finds this opinion very interesting and asks Cain if he is saying that this barbarian could face the entire empire on his own. Cain admits he is not sure of the outcome, but he felt something very similar to what felt when he first met the Tower Master, a feeling of absolute power that transcends the ordinary. The Tower Master wonders if he means that Cattle is of the legendary hero class, but he feels he is not yet qualified to make that final judgment. The Tower Master concludes from Cain's words that Cattle must be someone of great value, which Cain completely agrees with. Meanwhile, in the bustling streets of the Barcan territory, as Cattle was walking through through the market, a woman walking in front of him stumbled and was about to fall to the ground. In a quick reaction, Kettle catches her in time and prevents her from falling, then advises her to be more careful with her steps and asks if she is okay. Kettle expects, as usual, for the woman to run away from him in fear as soon as she sees him, but instead she thanks him with great politeness and bows to him respectfully before going on her way. Kettle stands in confusion at her calm reaction. He looks around carefully and feels something strange and different in the air. People are passing by him, some casting fleeting glances, but none of them are avoiding him or moving away in fear as they usually do. He wonders in great confusion why people have suddenly stopped avoiding him. The sunlight streams into this crazy luxurious room, hitting the polished floors and gold drapes. Sitting on a big fancy chair is the Lord, and he's looking at our boy Kettle, who just walked in. The Lord's voice is laced with concern as he asks, "You doing all right? I heard you were almost branded a demon." Kettle, still rocking his battle-worn armor, just gives a faint, chill smile. "Nah, it's no big deal," he says. "Honestly, I don't even know what a brand is." The Lord studies him, his eyes narrowing just a bit. "I see, I knew you were strong, but still." Then Kettle chimes in, "But it looks like things around you are changing." The Lord looks curious. "You mean the people in the territory?" Kettle leans back, thinking for a second. "Yeah." A look of realization washes over the Lord's face. "Ah," he murmurs, "that's probably because of the rumors." You can hear the frustration in his voice. He explains how whispers started spreading from villagers, merchants, and even knights, all talking about a man with power that just wasn't human. Some were saying he was using demonic energy, while others swore they saw divine light protecting him. The stories just took on a life of their own. They say after Aquas was defeated, everyone hit the deck and passed out, except for one person. And when they woke up, Kettle's axe was literally glowing with divine power. So now the people who saw it are convinced Aquas lent him her power. And just like that, people started calling him the one who fought the demon with Aquas. Kettle listens to all this and a small sigh escapes him, followed by a faint smile. "So that's how it turned out," he mutters, half amused by the wild legend he's become. The room goes quiet for a second before the Lord speaks up again, his expression softening. "Sorry about that," he says with a tired sigh. "By the time I tried to shut the rumors down, they were already everywhere." Kettle just shakes his head. "It doesn't matter," he replies calmly. "It's probably why people aren't running away from me anymore." The Lord frowns. "Most likely, they probably think of you as the demon opponent now." Kettle tilts his head, kinda tasting the new title. "Demon opponent, huh?" He leans back, closing his eyes in thought. "So that's my reputation now." A few days later, Kettle is at the bustling mercenary guild. The receptionist Rosa greets him with a huge smile. "Congratulations, Mr. Kettle, your rank has been upgraded. You're now a C rank." Kettle blinks, surprised. "C rank? Yep, you've jumped 3 full ranks," she says proudly, holding up a piece of parchment. He scratches his chin, a little amused. "Guess that means I actually did something worthwhile." Rosa nods like crazy. "Of course, you'll be getting a new mercenary badge soon, a custom one just for you. Because of that, it might take a little time." Kettle just chuckles. "Even the badge is gonna be custom made for me, huh?" She leans in, her voice dropping to an excited whisper. "From C rank on up, you're recognized by the entire guild system as a real mercenary, so we gotta treat you right. You'll have access to most cities, capitals, and even temples. Only the imperial capital is still off limits." "The Empire sounds pretty strict," Kettle comments. "Yes," she says, her smile fading a little. "Only people personally invited by nobles can get in. Nobody really knows what's going on in there. All we hear are disturbing rumors. Honestly, we know less about the imperial capital than we do about the demon realm." "That bad, huh?" Kettle murmurs. Rosa clears her throat dramatically. Anyway, now that you're C rank, you can take on almost all the available quests." Her excitement is infectious. "You can even enter B rank dungeons as long as you have a party." Kettle leans back, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Is that so? A B rank dungeon, huh? So I'll have access to all kinds of missions now." You can hear the anticipation in his voice, the kind a true warrior gets when new challenges are on the horizon. Elsewhere in the guild, a heavily armored knight just sighs into his cup. "I didn't expect something like that to happen." Later that day, Kettle is kicking it with his party at a tavern. His companions look super relieved to see him. "Was everything handled all right?" one asks. "The demon was reported and the Inquisition said it's all good, so I guess it's settled," Kettle replies calmly. "That's a relief," the guy says, visibly relaxing. The thief Casson then chimes in, "Still, that Sun God's Inquisitor is incredible. Defeating a demon like that." The priestess Hyes is shaking next to him. "That day I didn't pass out," she thinks to herself. "That's why I know just how powerful that Barbarian really is. He completely overpowered a named demon. Aquas just came in and poked the food that was already cooked." Casson then asks Kettle, "So now that you're a C rank, what's the plan?" "Nothing changes," Kettle answers simply. "I'll just keep doing the jobs I get as a C rank mercenary." His chill declaration silences the whole table. "I see," his friend says softly, just watching him with respect. The nun, however, is not buying it. She's frowning, thinking even after rising that high, he's still so humble. Don't be fooled. That stoic face is hiding some terrifying power. Trying to lighten the mood, Kettle leans forward. "So what are you all gonna do now?" The thief just shrugs. We're just F rank, not much we can really do yet." Then he grins. "To be honest, I was just planning to live day by day like a parasite and die, but now." I want to join you, Ren, and rise up like you. The armored knight snorts. Only junkies think that way. No wonder he's a bottom feeder. The tension between them flares up like they're about to throw down right there. Kettle leans in with a mischievous grin. Is that so? Then what's your plan from now on? The nun clears her throat loudly. Ahem, she interrupts, getting everyone's attention. Trying to sound casual, she says, I simply follow the will of Lady Kaluja as always. Kettle nods slowly, remembering something. Now that you mention it, I think I heard something from Aquas. The nun freezes, not expecting that at all. Kettle continues calmly. Those serving Kaluja are currently on a break. Only the high-ranking ones are still active. Her face gets all stiff. What? She blurts out, beads of sweat popping up on her forehead. Aquas must have been mistaken. I'm just an ordinary priest. Really? Is that so? If you say so, I'll take your word for it. The nun forces a laugh, but inside she's totally freaking out. He knows. Is he testing me or is he just messing with me? A shiver runs down her spine. So scary. Night falls over the city. Inside the mercenary guild, Rosa stretches and yawns. Off work, time to go home, she mutters, sorting through some papers. Suddenly, the door creaks open. A gust of cold air sweeps in, making her flinch. She looks up and sees a tall figure in a dark cloak stepping inside. We're closed, she starts to say, but stops dead when the man speaks. I have a request, the cloaked stranger says in a deep voice. She blinks, then sighs in defeat. Overtime it is, she mutters, pulling out her ledger. All right then, what kind of request? The man realizes her eyes are completely glazed over. He steps closer, his face hidden in the shadows of his hood, and clears his throat. What I need, he says slowly, is an escort mission. 2 people, myself and a young girl. The sound of a pen scratching on paper is the only thing you can hear. Rosa, still half asleep, repeats, 2 people, and the destination. The hooded man's voice is calm but heavy. The kingdom of Denian. She freezes mid-word, looking up at him. Its capital, he adds, lowering his hood just enough to reveal a scarred face that sends a chill right through her. Her breath catches an escort all the way to Denian's capital, from this remote region of all places. The man doesn't explain, just stands there like a statue. Her mind starts racing, an escort across nations. At this hour, she sizes him up, the high-quality cloak, the fancy fabric underneath, the faint vibe of nobility. He's no ordinary traveler. Someone like that doesn't just walk in here without a damn good reason. Her green eyes narrow, wearing a robe like that and still hiding his identity. Very suspicious. But hey, professionals gotta be professional. She takes a deep breath. All right, I'll accept it for now. She looks up, putting on a careful smile. Then, do you have any form of identification? He mutters, then pulls out a small metallic card. Use this. The moment Rosa sees it, her eyes go wide. That's a mercenary guild token, she gasps. That's not something you just find lying around, she murmurs, her mind reeling. Without a word, the man places it on the desk. The guild's verification crystal lights up, confirming it's legit. Verified, she says quietly, almost in awe. Then, she continues after a beat, I'll collect the commission fee. The hooded man nods and reaches into his cloak again. A second later, a bright golden coin rolls across the counter, shining in the dim light. Pure gold, she whispers, stunned. At this amount we can provide. 1 person, she says reluctantly. What? The man replies, completely stunned. Only 1, he exclaims, leaning forward. Rosa quickly explains, it's a bodyguard request after all. You're asking for an escort all the way to Denian's capital, across dangerous territory filled with monsters and bandits. The risk is extremely high. She points to a map on the wall, showing the long, sketchy route. It could take nearly a month. That's why only rank mercenaries usually take these jobs. The man frowns under his hood. I see, but isn't there any way to get at least 2 people? It's possible, she says after thinking for a second, but in that case the mercenaries will be a lower grade. Are you okay with that? She leans forward, her tone half teasing, half serious. If you want reliable guards, I'd recommend at least a D rank. The man clenches his fist slightly. Then please give me someone skilled, he says firmly. The rate you've offered covers exactly 1 person, she explains, still feeling uneasy. Still, isn't there some way? She sighs, starting to get annoyed. What the heck? Why are you being so desperate? She mutters. Honestly, from a remote territory like this, it's hard enough just finding anyone willing to take the job. Straightening up, she says firmly, I'll try my best, but finding 2 will be difficult. I see, the man says quietly, finally nodding. Understood, I'll leave it to you then. After he leaves, Rosa stares at the gold coin. It was pure gold, all right, but the surface was weirdly flat, like it had been pressed by some kind of divine heat. Small but a pretty rare coin, she whispers. Its surface is strangely refined. She watches his figure disappear through the door. He's trying to hide his identity. But who is he? A chill runs down her spine. This is going to be trouble, she murmurs to herself. Outside, the cloaked man walks alone through the empty streets. He stops in front of a wooden door and knocks. A blonde girl's voice asks, "Who's there?" The man reveals his face and replies, "Your loyal retainer." The man relaxes as a second figure appears, a blonde woman in a similar robe, her soft blue eyes glowing in the dark. "Aaron," she says quietly. She lowers her hood and gives a warm smile. Her name is Aline. "Please come in," she says gently, leading him inside. "How did it go?" she asks once the door is closed. "They accepted the request for now," he replies, taking off his hood. "Thank goodness," she sighs with relief. "How many people did they allow?" He hesitates. Just one. Aline's smile vanishes, her face tightening with concern. The flickering candlelight dances in her worried eyes, telling us that whatever journey they're planning, it's a hell of a lot more than just a simple escort mission. Inside the quiet room, the man Aaron lowers his head. "I'm sorry," he says quietly. "We don't have enough spare funds." Aline forces a small smile, shaking her head. "No, it can't be helped. If only I hadn't been stupid enough to get scammed," Aaron adds. She just sighs. "No, that couldn't have been avoided. Even if it had been me, the result would have been the same." Suddenly, their eyes well up with tears and they both bury their faces in their chests, crying out in frustration. Aaron freezes awkwardly, totally caught off guard. "Silence!" he shouts, all flustered. A long, awkward pause follows before they both stand silently, avoiding eye contact, their faces a little red. After a moment, she clears her throat. Anyway, about the escort mission, how long do you think it will take?" He crosses his arms, thinking, "I don't know, finding someone trustworthy might take some time." "I see," Aline says softly, "then we'll just have to wait for now." She smiles, her expression turning gentle. "It's late. You've done well, Aaron. Get some rest." He nods slowly. "Yes." Later that night, Aline stares out the window, her face dark under the moonlight. The sky is shimmering, like golden dust scattered through the air. She mutters under her breath, "Again tonight, huh?" The next morning, Aaron is standing by the table, his voice heavy. "I'm truly ashamed. It's really hard to find someone reliable." She frowns. This is troubling. Then she notices the small bag of supplies. "We're starting to run low on food. Can't be helped, we'll have to starve for a while." "I know," he says, his gaze dropping. "It's all because of my incompetence." "No, Aaron," she says gently, "it's not your fault." He hesitates, then mutters, still telling the lord of this territory about our situation. But before he can finish, she cuts him off. "We can't risk it." Alen looks down, conflicted but understanding. "Yes. We can't trust anyone. Even hearing a bodyguard is dangerous. We can't afford to take any more risks." The night deepens as Aline breaks the silence. "Aaron, do you remember the day we had to abandon the kingdom and flee?" Her eyes darken with the memory. "We didn't even know who was a friend or an enemy. It's been a while and there's still no word from there." She sighs softly. "Even though both of us escaped, I'm sorry, we've grown weak-hearted." Aaron just lowers his gaze, the weight of their past hanging heavy in the air. Outside, the grand capital of Denian shines faintly on the horizon. "By the way, Aaron," Alen asks hesitantly, "are you sure Denian's kingdom is truly safe?" "Yes," he replies with total confidence. "That place will protect you well. The king of Denian made an oath when the princess was born. They might even help us seek revenge. That's why you must survive, Alen." His gaze softens. "Our princess. If even you are lost, our kingdom will truly be finished." But she hesitates. "Can we really trust a mercenary?" "You don't need to worry," Aaron reassures her. "We paid the guild well for a reason. They'll surely recommend someone trustworthy." Alen nods slowly, though you can see she's still not sure. "I hope so," she whispers. Then her expression softens as a thought crosses her mind. "Just who will end up guarding me?" Her imagination starts running wild, picturing some strong, handsome warrior with a noble heart. Her cheeks turn a little pink. "I hope it's a handsome, knightly person." Meanwhile, miles away, Kettle is sprawled out lazily on a wooden bed. "Nothing to do," he mutters, just staring at the ceiling, bored out of his mind. He sighs and rolls over. "Now that I think about it, I wonder what those guys are up to now." A small smile creeps onto his face as he thinks about his old crew. "Those stubborn brutes of the white snowfield. I bet they're still living their same stupid lives," he chuckles. His thoughts drift back to that time, the blinding snow, the roaring winds, and the day his journey began. "Our first quest, over snow," he murmurs. He remembers the freezing air biting at his skin and a massive white bear charging right at him. "At first, I thought it was just a hallucination, until the pain and the icy wind reminded me it was all too real." "Yeah," he says to himself with a faint grin. "That first quest was hell. I nearly froze to death in a week." The blinding white of the snow stretches on forever. In the freezing cold, Kettle's quest window shimmers in front of his eyes, a faint blue glow reminding him how this all started. The screen before him read, "Quest complete," but after leaving the snowfields, no new quests ever popped up. Now lying on his bed in his small, dim room, he stares at the ceiling, lost in thought. "Now that it's quiet, I'm almost bored," he mutters. He sits up suddenly, a look of realization crossing his face. "Don't tell me, it was only for the white snowfield." His eyes narrow, a flicker of uncertainty in them. "I'm not sure," he murmurs, turning towards the window. The scene shifts. Sunlight is pouring through the guild's walls. Kettle stands at the counter, scanning a paper Rosa just handed him. "An escort request?" he asks, raising an eyebrow. Rosa, trying her best to contain her excitement, just nods enthusiastically with a huge smile. And just like that, without having a clue, Kettle accepts the very request that's about to throw him into his next wild journey.